Receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
Ladies and gentlemen, my head is just spinning on this Friday edition. Look at these headlines on drudgereport.com and Infowars.com. California plans to ban all gas cars. Again, that's meant to devastate our economy, shut down our industry. The electric cars take actually more energy to drive and operate and run. But the globalists want to cut off our gasoline and cut off our coal. Then they can strategically manipulate through regulations and deploy only those technologies they wish to the public. It is a new dark age they're creating. Meanwhile, there's another story on Drudge Report. Antifa plans civil war to overthrow government. And this isn't our words. This is video that Steven Crowder's undercover journalist got, go in the direction of the wonderful folks at Project Veritas, which, by the way, that's the direction we're going as well. Just going to let you know that on record. And public video and their own statements. And remember, a month ago, we had Mr. Hagman on, Doug Hagman, and he said, we're doing what Veritas has done. We have embedded off-duty and retired police officers and private detectives going to these meetings across the country, and they're handing out AK-47s, shanks. They're planning their attacks on public officials, police, and they're planning the attack coming up the next few months. Well, now we know the date. It's November 4th, and we have the videos. And we don't just have one or two. They're flooding in. I can't even watch them all. They mean business, and they're being funded by George Soros and others. And they think when a bunch of cops get shot in the back of the head or talk show hosts get attacked or more congressmen get shot, that we're going to roll over to them and follow their political correctness and their globalism and gut the country. You people got another thing coming. See, we're winning politically. We're winning intellectually, and they want to overturn that. And they're hopping mad that the economy now is at 3.1, something they say can never happen again. And it's online at current growth rate should be at 3.5 by the end of the year. They don't know what to do. And Trump gets these tax cuts through, the economy is going to roar. And what are they afraid of? They're afraid of the cornucopia of the free market. And they're afraid of that, and they're desperate to break this country's will now. Mainstream media is dying. Democratic Party's dying. The Republican establishment's dying. Anti-establishment candidates are winning across the board. In every special election, Democrats are being defeated, and establishment Republicans are being routed by patriots. And suddenly, the numbers are coming in from black groups, Hispanic groups, and others. They're shifting to conservative or libertarian in massive numbers as the awakening accelerates. The globalists push too hard. So what's going to happen? They're going to go to the violence card, and they're going to go to the false flag card. This is it. Get ready. Stunning report when we come back. I'm going to go through these videos. I'm going to air large excerpts of Crowder's excellent report and his embedded journalist. But I really think folks want to work for InfoWars. We need to vet journalists to get them hired. We've been working on it. And then deploy them to these major universities to just go into these meetings with Antifa where there's men in suits and wealthy people that are directing this. I mean, this is like many other witnesses to it talked about with the weathermen. You'd be in a room with people with PhDs, and they're calmly talking about how they're going to kill 25 million Americans and put another 50 million in internment camps. And that was back in the 70s and 80s. And these same folks are now deeply embedded in our entire government, and they're about to make their move. I am rarely late getting in the chair here, but we're just reviewing all this intel coming in, and it's all directly from the enemy. And it is just incredible how arrogant they are. It is amazing that they do not realize how criminal they are, and that they believe they're going to be protected. And they're making their move all across the United States. They are activating inside U.S. intelligence, inside the U.S. military, inside the FBI, inside local police, inside universities, inside factories, on farms, in schools. They are activating and openly coming out as communist and saying in the next few months they're going to start killing people en masse. And the president has to move against these folks. Reality Winner, that was the name she changed, as if they didn't know she was mentally ill when she did that. She had a top secret security clearance and was working with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and said that she wanted to kill all white people. And then she finally was so public about it, they had to arrest her. So what's happening is they're just leaving all these people in, and all the Obama embeds that are inside the government are protecting these stables of scum. What am I talking about? Here's a story on News Wars. Antifa Army lieutenant radicalized under Islamicist West Point advisor. Devout communist planned revolution on U.S. soil. And then he announces it at West Point when he graduates. Now here's the big story. Infowars.com. It's on drudgereport.com in the middle column. Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. Did you hear that? Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. And it's not Paul Watson's words, though he organizes it well. It's their words and a bunch of long videos from universities all over the country, Berkeley being, of course, central, saying we're getting the AK-47s. We've got the shotguns. And handing out the knives to go stab Alan Dershowitz, anybody that tries to go speak at Berkeley. And they say, we're not going to let you speak. We're going to kill people. It's not enough to walk up and hit women in the head with bike locks, or men in the head with bike locks, who just are randomly walking by. But if you look clean cut, got a book bag on your back, you're on a bicycle, you don't have devil tats all over you, you're going to get hit in the head, you're going to get shanked. If you're white, by white people. They're almost all white people. And they want to signal how much they hate white people, so that's why they've got professors and everybody else from Baylor University at college right here in Texas, at Waco, to Berkeley in San Francisco. They're the radicalizers standing up saying whites need to be genocided. Whites are inherently evil. They must be dealt with. And they are totally full of themselves and completely and absolutely violent. Now, remember who was on almost a month ago, it was 3.5 weeks ago, we're getting the video, Doug Hagman, and they've launched a Project Veritas type operation. And he said, we have detectives and retired police and others inside meetings in San Francisco and other areas, and they are there saying to the world that they are preparing a violent overthrow sometime in November, October. Now, why do you think the communists are suddenly uncloaking themselves? Because after growing under the floorboards, they want to look like a legitimate government when they take over and when they call for the racial war and when they call for the uprising. This is a playbook, and it's from them. They're saying this is happening, and they're being allowed to prepare and gear up for it. What will it be in a month? What will it be in just a few weeks? What will it be? It snuck up on us, hasn't it? It's the October Revolution that stretched into November and December. It's the 100-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. We're here. It's happening now. This is real. What are you going to do about it? It's the big question you've got to ask yourself. Because they mean business. We have to hold our fire, but we have to be prepared and know they're coming over the line. And we've got to be on target and ready. And everybody's got to start packing. Because when they strike, it'll be like fire ants where they crawl up over your legs. When they get in place, one of them that's leading, and it's all genetically engineered, by Mother Nature that way, stings you, releases a pheromone, and all the others sting. Once they get in place, they communicate by pheromones. And it's the same thing. They get all over you, they get in place, and it's going to be, boom, you wake up one morning and 300 cops are dead. You wake up and talk show host and members of Congress are wiped out. Trump Towers from Chicago to New York are on fire. So the police don't think they can respond. But there'll be something that happens right before that. A mass shooting at a school, a bombing of a federal building, maybe more, pinned on a right-wing patsy who's a listener of this show. That's why they're putting us all over the news and putting us on Comedy Central with all their drooling viewers to go, here's the bad guy, here's the terrorist. Get ready for this. When it all happens, it's his fault. He made his followers do it. So they false flag, and they'll blame Alex Jones and Donald Trump and Matt Drudge and Rush Limbaugh. And even a lot of other conservative talk show hosts will kind of halfway go along with it because they'll think, oh, my competition's about to get shut down. No, idiot, you're about to get shut down. Bolshevik style. Because that's how it worked. The Bolsheviks said, we've just seized Moscow, but if you turn in your guns and work with us as some of the other political parties, we'll let you rule with us. And just help us get the white Russians. Just help us get the Christian Russians. Just help us get the pro-czarist. Just help us get that one group. And then you're going to be fine. And then they just killed people with each new group of moron traitors that lowered the drawbridge. So we're here. And I'm sure of it, that this whole NFL thing was the activation of this. And my sources concur with that. It's not gone well for them. Trump's approval rating, even with their skewed polls, is up 5 points. Some polls even higher. The economy's coming back on. They're really freaking out. So our revolution is funds and money and success and freedom. And theirs is stabbing people and bombing people and shooting cops in the back of the head. And they think when this all happens, it'll be, oh, look, we just had our commie revolution because we've had enough after this white supremacist or whoever it is they set up went and did this horrible event. So now we're done. It's the uprising. Ah! So if there's a big terror attack that they blame on patriots or Christians or conservatives or independent media, that's what they want to shut down, not if, when, you'll have 2 or 3 days of them hyping it to get people to a fever pitch so they can make it look like it was organic. But by the second or third night, you've got to be, if you want to stop these folks, you got to be basically eyes and ears. And they're going to hit at night. They're going to start at about 10 o'clock at night. You got to be waiting on them 2 to 3 days after. I don't think they're going to change their operation. This is too tried and true. You got to be waiting for them, ladies and gentlemen. Because they're going to try to overwhelm the police forces in cities they don't control first. And they're going to lay them out. They may also do it in cities they control because they know the police chief will be involved in it and will order basically a stand down. So they're going to make their move. That's where everybody's on edge. And we've really tried to fix this as peacefully as we can. And if the Attorney General, who's completely surrounded, I know, doesn't move on these forces, you need to understand the Antifa idiots are just going to be the cover for the squads and some of the other specialized groups that they're going to be using to decapitate and they think intimidate and confuse patriot government. But you better believe they're going to try to kill conservative Supreme Court justices. You better believe they're going to try to kill Judge Roy Moore, people like that. I mean, it's folks need to know they're coming for you. They're coming for you. October is only a few days away. They're saying their operation launches November 4th. That's probably a diversion. I think the attack's coming in the middle of October. That's just looking at all the pieces. I'd say look for middle of October, but first look for a new Charlottesville, much bigger, or a group of Charlottesville. That's going to be the cover for the detonation. On August 25th, over a month ago, my memory thought it was about 3.5 weeks ago, Doug Hagman, who runs a law enforcement training center in New Jersey, has a lot of amazing contacts I've learned from experience in the decade plus I've been having him on, told us that he was very concerned because from the East Coast to the West Coast to Illinois as well, they had retired police officers and private detectives that he had recruited through a law enforcement organization to go to hundreds of Antifa meetings, and that they were being centrally programmed by executives, very professional, high-ranking people in the community, preparing them for a mass uprising with weapons, including open discussion of killing police officers, open discussion of overthrowing government. Hashtag undercover Antifa, MSM ignores video of Antifa planning stabbing and shooting attacks. Now that's Louder with Crowder today. That's up on Infowars.com. But also what's happening is we searched Antifa listed as terror organization just 5 minutes ago. And Zach, one of the producers, was able to recreate it. So we're going to shoot a video later and upload this so radio listeners can see it. But Google was trying to not let him go to it, saying this is questionable information, even though it was Politico that he was going to. So they're even penalizing Politico, kind of like they called up this year Forbes. Google executives called them, and I've gotten Google calls before. As soon as I didn't play ball, I couldn't talk to their vice presidents anymore. I never did play ball. But they said, listen, don't write articles critical of this or that or critical of Antifa, or you're going to be delisted as fake news. So you have the big super internet companies, these giant monopolies now, coming in and saying, we don't even want you to get to this information. Now, they said they were going to start doing this to restrict fake news or to tell you, hey, this is questionable content. It's not like you're on your phone and then ask, put in this number so we know you're a human, not a bot. It's beyond that. It's keeping you from sharing virally and quickly even the links. There it is. Google and Facebook take aim at fake news sites. And so I guess that's Politico and the London Independent now. No, they're going to cover for Antifa just like they did in the Arab Spring, covering for Morrissey overthrowing the government, killing hundreds of thousands of people. They're going to protect it during the October Revolution 100 years later, but this time in America. And then I've got the clip from Doug Hagman in late August saying, we have our sources, they're embedded, we have this. It's been given to law enforcement. And I now know he had this info and gave it to law enforcement and gave it to media. They wouldn't run it. Same thing with Veritas, same thing with the great folks over at Louder with Crowder. That's their big report that Paul reports on today. The media had this weeks ago, Nightline, all of them. They don't want to show you people saying, we're handing out the weapons, we're getting ready to kill everybody. You're talking like real helter-skelter, Charlie Manson level stuff nationwide. Zach, tell folks what happened when you tried to visit mainstream news sites.
Yes, so I was basically looking up the clip of what had happened just when the first time that CNN was starting to support Antifa, and they were trying to ask a question about what it is before they were designated as a terrorist group. And I remember in New Jersey, The Department of Homeland Security, I believe, was the one who did it. So I went to go look it up on Google, and I got a capture warning by Google basically saying, hey, there's some unusual activity on your Google searches. Please verify if you are a robot or not. So it was very bizarre.
And that's on a desktop computer. We're going to recreate that because it also happened to Allie earlier today. Wow, but boy, was Hagman a month ago not dead on?
No, he was absolutely dead on. He's been pretty weird. I mean, there's been a lot that's been coming out slowly and subtly. And, you know, Hagman's had a lot of good people he's been connected to that has been inside, that he has talked to, that I think the last time he was on, he was showing documentation that he had gathered based on just meetings that they were having, just in terms of just planning massive group rallies to block the cops from getting any support to right-wing activists or people during any of the rallies or anything like that.
It's incredible, and planning violence. We'll be back with that clip. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. And you notice I'm coming back into breaks a little bit late today because behind the scenes, a lot is going on. A lot of intel is coming in. If you just joined us, Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. That's on drudgereport.com today, right in the middle column. It's also on newswars.com. It's a Paul Joseph Watson article. We're going to get to that in a moment. You've got Steven Crowder's undercover folks getting video. You've got the people at Veritas getting these similar videos. You've got our camera crews getting these videos out in the open. They're saying this. We have a flood of Antifa saying they are preparing with weapons, knives, guns to kill conservatives, patriots, and white people en masse. And ladies and gentlemen, when you go look at these crowds or these videos, 90% of the people are white. I don't want to demonize white people. I don't blame any group for what other people in the group do, but it's a fact that it is weird social justice warrior, crazed, self-hating white people that are trying to ignite a race war in America. Now, here is Doug Hagman on August 26 on this broadcast, a month ago plus, laying out his sources and the undercover audio and video they're getting. The full interview is an hour long. It's up on Infowars.com, but it should be added to Paul Joseph Watson's article because this is just more proof. So here is a clip of private investigator Doug Hagman.
Briefly, for those just joining, essentially we have a handful of investigators across the country, specific cities investigating and infiltrating these fascist groups. They've successfully done so in many cases. The latest report early this morning, 4:10 Eastern time this morning, saying, look, this one particular meeting in San Francisco, so well organized, the tactics, the training being very professional, the age of people there range from late 60s, perhaps early 70s, all the way down to late teens. This is the Resist Fascism movement. That's what they're calling themselves, but it's actually a fascist
And the report says
movement.
it's a lot of professionals. These aren't just the average meth head.
Yeah, exactly. These are above these are the people who are sending out the cannon fodder. The idiots you see in the street with the baseball or the bicycle helmets on and the baseball bats. I mean, those people are the useful idiots. Hire a stooge for a day or two and go out there and take a few whacks. Okay, that's who those people are. These people are the planners. These people are the architects of the chaos that we're seeing.
The brains.
Yeah, exactly. However, they're bringing in these professionals to teach, as you said, the weapons, self-defense.
They're force multiplying a revolutionary group.
Yep. Yeah. And
so it goes on. He breaks it all down, the plans to use weapons. And now we have hours of video. So no one can say this is edited, of just private meetings on the streets, just pouring in. And you go out to these things and they run over and scream, die, F you. They pour coffee on you. They have their kids doing it. This is what they're doing out in the open. Can you imagine the frothing, insane hate? And you think, well, so what if Tom Brokaw calls you a total racist? Nobody believes him. Yeah, 90% of people know that's bull, but there's a good 10% that literally think they are Captain America fighting Red Skull. In fact, more and more, they're showing up. They've put real comics out showing Captain America beating up the Tea Party a few years ago, and I'm one of the people Captain America beats up. And these people read it. They show up as live-action role players, and they just start attacking men, women, and children because they believe, take that, Hitler! So 3 years ago, they'd all go out to a park and have simulated battle with each other with rubber swords and rubber spears, dressed like elves and goblins. Good fun. I've driven by and seen it at parks and got out and watched it. It looks like they're having a good time. But see, here's the deal. They're not just playing Dungeons and Dragons, in a field. They're now, ladies and gentlemen, believe they're battling Red Skull. Now, we can make jokes about the chirping goblin that attacked me, and the media even tries to spin it. Oh, it's fake. Oh, Jones just goes out there and it just happens. I shot more than 20 videos on the streets of Seattle when I was there for a week. I shot them live. A lot of you watched them. Every time I went out, somebody said, F you, or got in my face, or threatened to attack me. One time when the camera wasn't rolling, I walked out of a restaurant, and a guy acted like he was going to hit me with his Range Rover. I had to jump out of the way, and I thought, did that guy try to just hit me? He rolls the window and goes, F you. And I couldn't help it. I just said, man, get out of the car. He goes, he thought he was real tough. I said, just get out. Just go ahead. So, he was against folks with tats. But, he had big muscles and tats all over him. He was going to show off. I said, you're a coward, thug, punk. Just because of your politics on the yard, you're not going to get out of that car. So I said, get out. And say that to my face right now. So he drove down the street while I was walking, calling me all these names, calling me gay. Oh, I thought you're so liberal. Oh, Alex is gay, so let's put him down. He called me the pejorative terms. And, of course, my response to somebody does that's always say, I'm a Russian agent, yeah. Or you say I'm gay? Okay, yeah, I am. You say I'm Jewish and that somehow is bad? Okay, I'm Jewish. Then let's just move forward. I'm not Jewish. It doesn't matter, though. I'd be proud if I was. I'm going to go to Israel. I want to see Israel. They're going to say I went there to get my orders. I can't live in this world of these mentally ill people where they want to dictate and try to bully me into submission. I'm not going to sit there and go along with it. But I'm digressing. They're planning a civil war. They're pushing it in the NFL. This is all being directed, and they want to make it racially based, where if you're not a liberal, that means you're a Nazi, so you deserve to be beat up, you deserve to be fired, you deserve to be thrown out by your landlord, you deserve to be killed. It's called a cultural revolution. It's a Mao model. You go to UT, where they have the Red Guard that openly march with AK-47s in Austin. They've told me to my face, you wait till the revolution starts, you're dead, Jones. And they've been beavering away behind the walls like termites forever. And now they're just spilling out. Imagine you are an officer, just graduated from Army's West Point. And at graduation, you have a hat saying communism will win. They've got the big banks. They've got the mainstream media. They've got everything. And they believe they're invincible. And that's why they're coming out in the open, because they're getting ready to D-Day. They're getting ready to launch their attack. Antifa Army lieutenant radicalized under Islamist's West Point advisor. Dan Lyman, newswars.com. What an important article. Devout communists planned revolution on U.S. soil. He's saying violence. We're going to kill people. We're getting ready to do it. He's prepared to lead the attack. He's wearing a Che Guevara shirt underneath his dress uniform. And he was taught this at West Point. A U.S. Army lieutenant exposed himself as a radical communist on Twitter last week, prompting a firestorm in the new media and the deep dive into his background, revealing that he was closely mentored by an Islamist professor. Look at the former CIA director. Look at the former intelligence director. All of them are Wahhabists. You can't make this up. Sorry. A deep dive into his background, revealing that he was closely monitored by an Islamist professor at West Point. InfoWars was one of the first to break the story of Second Lieutenant Spencer Rapone, who posted photos of himself in dress uniform, flashing a sign that read, "Communism will win," and proudly bearing a Che Guevara shirt beneath his military jacket, even though Che Guevara said Mexican Indians were cockroaches. Rapone is now under a former military investigation, but not for what he was wearing. The stuff on his Facebook says the violence is coming, get ready. We're going to kill capitalists. It has been discovered that Rapone's cadet advisor was Dr. Rashid Hossein, a man with whom Rapone grew close. Ugh. They reportedly traveled to India together. Oh, good Lord. According to examinations of Rapone's online history, his metamorphosis into an anti-American revolutionary appears to sync with the development of the camaraderie with Hossein. I can't read anymore. Go read it for yourself and see all the evidence. It's up to you to get this out. And this is just a snapshot of one of these roaches, one of these termites coming out in the light. Little arrogant demon. Talking about how much he hates America, how much he wants to walk around in our blood. You know what really isn't good about this is that these people aren't even worth fighting, except we have to. But, I mean, if it comes to a shooting war, it's like they're not even a worthy opponent. They're just trash. It's just taking out the garbage. Taking out the garbage. I mean, let's take a look again. We can make jokes about this, but this is an actual chirping, gibbering goblin creature that attacked me with coffee. Imagine when the green light comes for violence, what these chirping, hopping creatures will do. Here it is.
You're trash. Hey, come tell me on camera. Come tell me on camera. Come tell me on camera. Come here, coward. Come here, coward. Right here on camera. Right here. Tell people intellectually who you are.
Intellectually who I am?
Go ahead, yeah. Yeah.
I'm your mama.
I'm your mama.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
This is what they turn the people into. This is it right here. Literal slave of the system. Yeah, can't even talk. Look at you. Hey, this is what they turn the people into.
Love so hard to find.
Literal slave of the system. See that? That's who they are. Look at the slave.
There's hours of this up on Infowars.com, but here's 5 minutes of the undercover report from louderwithcrowder.com. Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government is where you find it on drudgereport.com. You got to go read this because there's a bunch of videos. This is just one of them from around the country. The Revolutionary Communist website, the main socialist groups, all of them say November 5th, and they're already blocking roads. We have video of that. In California, in LA, and other areas saying, get ready, it's coming. So they want violence, they want death. And remember, no matter how many people they attack, whatever, you fight back, you're going to be a horrible person in the news. So the scum of the earth is now coming out of their dungeons, out of their little minion holes. Everybody should be aware of it. Here is part of that report. And remember, this was all given to the media weeks ago. We reported it a month ago plus from our sources. This was all given to the media, just like all the election fraud news, all of it. And they chose not to run hours of this sensational stuff. And the police are doing nothing. Because, you know, that's American pie now, is dirty communist and Antifa fascists that want to go out and hurt people. And they're planning violence and mass murder. See, nowadays, Charlie Manson wanted this back in the 60s. Nowadays, Charlie Manson would be a congressman. He'd get up there and talk about killing white people and how they're the devil, or black people, or vice versa, with a swastika between his crazy eyes. Helter-skelter, and they'd say, oh, make that man a congressman. Here it is.
The idea is just plain clothes and hard tactics, and I don't think they'll know ahead of them because they're not prepared for what we're planning.
Here, you're gonna take the knife. How much?
order to get in with the Antifa crowd, we had to infiltrate their private groups. After news broke that they were officially classified as a domestic terrorist organization, they pulled everything in much closer to the chest. They started vetting people, becoming paranoid about spies. They demanded we meet with them in person, installing a cryptic messaging app onto our phone, which they used to organize.
So I just met with the guy, and he installed a super secret encrypted messenger app on my phone, and they immediately took roll call, using all pseudonyms such as Firebird, Ski Mask, Xavius. Yeah, everyone except for Will.
Yes, Will, whom we immediately identified on Facebook. Will also boasted of his sawed-off shotguns and armory in his trunk. At least that's what he said.
I have a toolbox of full shit.
Did you bring your gun?
I have, like, on the border between just a regular rifle and an assault weapon and a sawed-off style shotgun. Shit is the fan.
Yeah, like last ditch here.
Blue Subaru with a dent on the side, on the driver's side. That's mine.
So remember, just as the local authorities will remember, this is Will. What happened to you, Will?
And then I've got a handgun. Yeah, we got 2 AKs coming. If you go down to like the military surplus store, the Navy surplus store, whatever, you can get like a K-bar for like 30, 40 bucks. And it's just a combat knife. It's a fixed blade, 5 inches or so, but it's just you strap it on your leg and you're good to go. I mean, this one's like tiny, so you have to really stab them the whole time.
Shit is the fan.
Yeah, and like last ditch is going to be
Blue Subaru.
lure 'em down here.
Whoa, 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 hold. Luring people to their cars with sawed-off shotguns and handing out knives and shivs. This went far beyond a goof, and we needed to get Nake Jared out of there. Good thing the man's got a quick mind.
Is there a place to shit around here? I don't know this campus.
And to the right.
All right, I'll be right back. You guys gonna be in a few minutes?
Yes, at the risk of being called a snitch, Nake Jared immediately turned the footage over to the authorities, who were already aware of our presence there, by the way. Turns out they'd been tracking this pansexual / transgender queer with an axe to grind for a while, and they were grateful for our footage. The media, on the other hand, who you think would jump on a story like this, well, their response is what's most disturbing of all. He was just down there at President's Circle, and they were handing out sharp objects to stab people with, said they had someone coming with an AK. Why did it take 2 late-night hosts, comedians, to find this out?
You know what, I wish you guys luck.
Even being shown the footage in the presence of police officers to confirm authenticity, they walked away. Also, I should note, this is Dan Harris from Nightline, national ABC News. He knew about the footage and the whole story, too. I offered it to him and asked for his card. He did not give it to me. We were delivering a story to local and national
news. All right, folks, we're going to come back with more of this. Again, this is amazing. And by the way, Crowder's a real comic who's actually doing real news. You've got all these fake comics that then pose as myself every night to misrepresent what we stand for and call us racist so that mentally ill people that they're winding up then kill us. That's what this is. This is a build-up towards revolution, a build-up towards a new October revolution with the 100th anniversary coming up in just a week. On Infowars.com, there's a live feed of the show up there, video feed. And look at the comments. They're just the best. NFL ratings are dropping faster than Bill Clinton's pants in an Arkansas trailer park. And then look at this latest. Ben Garrison. We got to get him back on. Here's the latest Ben Garrison cartoon. It's got the Equality Team, San Francisco Pinky Niners, the Indianapolis Ingrates sitting on the American flag, the Tennessee Tantrums, the Denver Virtue Signalers, the Cleveland Reds, the Carolina Concussions, the Seattle Snowflakes. Ben Garrison is the best. And I've been a big fan of political cartoons, looking at political cartoons they even had in Roman times that they have imprints and paintings of. And they made some jokes back then. And then there were a lot of famous cartoons in our country's history. I actually own quite a few books that are volumes of them. But, I mean, Ben Garrison, I think, from what I've seen, is the greatest editorial cartoonist in history. Not just because I agree with him. He's more prolific. We got better tools nowadays than pen and ink drawing it and then having to print it out. I mean, granted, he's got better tools than he had before. But he's the best. And there's all these other amazing ones. But wow. Look at that. Indianapolis Ingrates. But you know what's really funny? is that they really thought they could force feed everybody to go along with this. You know what's not funny, though? The propaganda may be failing, but it's only meant to wind up their own minions to go out and start race wars and to go out and start massive attacks and to go out and start a cover for the deep state to move against Trump so it looks like it's organic. So their plan's not going well. Looks like a monkey you-know-what in a football, as they used to say. But still, we shouldn't underestimate it and know they're planning on launching it. Because it's not just idiot, college folks who'll sit there and talk about how they're going to have got knives and weapons. It's our reports from folks embedded that it's far more than that. They are talking about stabbing people and, and it's happened. The issue is they're trying to foment it as the cover. I'm not saying that they could actually overthrow the country, but they're used as the cover. This is a breaking report. Fox News. Trump delays Air Force One to call officer injured in motorcade crash. An officer got hit. President Donald Trump delayed Air Force One's departure from Indianapolis on Wednesday until after he was able to talk with the motorcycle officer who crashed in the motorcade to the airport. Initial report said Trump called the officer during the flight back to Washington, but the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police tweeted Thursday the president delayed the flight. And the thing is, every time he does this, the media says either he didn't do it or he didn't care. Most of the time, you don't know when Trump does stuff like this, the personal touch. The point is, Obama didn't used to do stuff like this. I mean, he wouldn't even visit a hurricane hit area. Hillary wouldn't even do it. And then they'll go, oh, but you didn't go to Puerto Rico and you didn't send help when he had sent help. But granted, the military is completely, Florida alone has it overtaxed. Texas, you don't hear about Texas anymore. Mexico's been hit by all these earthquakes. They couldn't send help anymore. Puerto Rico is a possession of the U.S. It's totally covered in water, basically, still in many areas, and has no power. What are you going to do? That's why civilization's so tenuous. And if we have a civil war or something along those lines or a depression, 90% of people lived in rural areas in the Great Depression. Look it up. And about half of those were self-sufficient. So about 45% of folks were totally self-sufficient. Now it's less than 5%, and 10% live rural. The numbers are basically flipped. You have a real depression. It will be a meltdown, crazy time event. Think about that. Think about that long. Think about that hard, and why we should all be trying to prop civilization up while at the same time trying to get something ready.
Early on a freezing cold morning in 1776 in Philadelphia, a 47-page booklet was published that would go on to change world history. The publication was called Common Sense, and its author was Thomas Paine. The pamphlet contained clear truths, clear to all right-thinking, rational persons, and the common sense uniting them into a useful whole. Like that powerful expression of American consciousness, today we need another jolt of common sense, this time in business. Today, responsible, purposeful business leaders are taking up this mantle and laying claim to the phrase common sense business. This book is about restoring faith in the market and wealth creation. It sets up a dramatic tension and then promises the reader a better way. The true secrets to enduring success. And it does it from real life using dramatic case study examples. Will you join all those who are showing us how, why, and where common sense business is being executed? More importantly, do you want to know how you can do it too?
And that's the new book, already a bestseller, Common Sense Business, by our guest, Ted Malloch. And again, Ted Malloch's one of those names. I remember 20 years ago going, look at the globalist at the Aspen Institute. And look, he's one of the executive board of the World Economic Forum. But a lot of people have been in that system trying to promote Americana, trying to promote free market. And for over a decade, he's been one of the main leaders helping really expand the amount of people in the establishment, you could say, that realize the way globalism got set up is dead on arrival. You've seen Peter Thiel and many others say the tide is going out on globalism because it was authoritarian, it was crony capitalist, it was centralized, and it was greedy and wanted to create austerity for other groups and peoples to consolidate control, to create a world of renters instead of a world of owners. They could have ruled the world. They were in the position to do it. They were already doing it. But they killed the golden goose. That's my perspective. But it's great to get Ted Malloch on with us, tedmalloch.com. I'm not going to go over his entire bio and all his best-selling books, and top advisor to top companies and CEOs, and again, served as the executive board of the World Economic Forum. That's the most important meeting in the world. I mean, it's like a public Bilderberg meeting. Bilderberg itself is, even according to Ted, is just a joke these days. And, of course, he's been a senior policy position in the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations in the U.S. State Department. I'm not going to go over his PhDs and all the books and the rest of it, and how he is the spiritual enterprise research. He is the research professor at Yale University. He also co-directs the project Practical Wisdom for Management for the spiritual and philosophical traditions, along with the, I'm not going to go over all the rest of it from Yale. The point is, he knows all the big kingpins, and he's here telling you that globalism is falling apart. So what are the globalists doing right now then? Trying to create racial division, trying to create divide and conquer, trying to kill nationalism that's springing up from Catalonia to the United States, from Brazil to the Middle East. Why are they trying to kill organic free market awakening when that's what's always made us all wealthier, happier, and better? I mean, they admit many of their elite publications they're losing and that there's a total reversal. So why are they doubling down? Or am I wrong?
Well, it's great to be with you, Alex, and to see you even from over here across the ocean. I wish I could be with you physically in Texas, but this is the next best thing, technology and the wondrous technology. You are so right, so spot on. I said, a few months ago that Davos man is dead. He's certainly dying, and we have to put some nails in that coffin. Peter Thiel, who you mentioned, says the tide of globalism is going out. So you see all over the world, and I was really excited about Trump's speech at the UN, where he talked about national sovereignty, literally, I think 17 times in that one speech. The world is moving back. The pendulum is swinging back to free peoples and to the nations in which they participate.
Wow. So from your own words, instead of me asking my obnoxious questions, where are we historically? How did we get there? Where are we going? Who are the players? What's this going to look like?
Well, I think we're in the throes of the storm. So by no means is this a determined, reality. We don't have the next world yet. I think we're in a throe of great change. So you saw Brexit first as a barometer event, and Nigel has been on your show. Of course, he's a very good friend of mine. That's Nigel Farage, recently in Alabama, celebrating another victory there. But so you had that swing in Britain, and then soon thereafter, you had at least from some perspectives, the unbelievable and unexpected election of Donald J. Trump as president of the United States. And then you had a number of elections in Europe where these nationalist parties did as well or better than many people expected. And just last week in Germany, you had an alternate political party basically transform the entire German political landscape such that we won't really have a Merkel power in Europe anymore. That new government will have to be put together on a coalition basis. And the AfD, which is the name of the party, the Alternative for Deutschland, will be the opposition party. This is an altogether new reality. I'll predict here on your show today that next March we'll have a new nationalist government in Italy.
Wow. And again, our media spun it. Corporate media spun it that it was another win for Merkel. But right there, if you look at the demographics and you look at the numbers of a parliamentary system, I know most of our audience understands that, but you might explain to them that once she becomes fractional, now other fractional parties can now basically dictate a lot of change. So this is the beginning of the end of the current wave of, I would say, anti-Europe, anti-West, really communists that have been running the EU.
Well, we don't know what will happen in the EU yet. I think that...
But don't you think if Germany starts falling to nationalism and free market again, won't that signal the whole EU?
Well, one can only keep their fingers crossed and hope that's the case. So we have in France someone who wants to double down on the EU bet, and certainly Merkel would have been his logical and likely partner to basically reintegrate the European countries to bring forward those institutions and make it not just a trading club, but a political entity threatening America on every front, by the way. That's less likely to happen today after the election in Germany, because she's going to be focused really on keeping Germany together and putting her coalition together.
Exactly, not selling Germany out to prop up the euro, not selling Germany out to keep this failed deal. And so failing forward, the EU, you might tell folks, because you're the expert on it, falling apart. So now it wants an EU army, total control. Its answer to people trying to pull out of it is police state, just like Catalonia, but on a bigger scale, correct?
Absolutely. Just a week and a half ago, we had the President Jean-Claude Juncker give a speech in Brussels where he basically gave his scenario for the future, which is a totally unified, totally integrated, totally statist, anti-capitalist, pro-socialist Europe with an even closer unification than it has today. And clearly that is not something that certain players in Europe, like Poland, possibly Spain, and most certainly the UK, which thankfully has voted to leave the European Union, wants to suffice. So we're going through the throes of the Brexit now and the negotiations, and the EU is being very punitive against our ally, the United Kingdom. So as they try to extricate themselves from this union, it's looking very difficult, very costly, and of course there are many remainers still in the UK.
What did you make of the arrogant Juncker, a literal top Nazi heir, whose family took over Luxembourg? I mean, he still has these duchies that he controls. He's this fossil, this throwback to something even beyond royalty, but just a kleptocratic family that's been perched on Europe for centuries. And then he threatens Trump, threatens America, and makes statements about how the EU with communist China will be able to stop America's recovery and get Trump back in line, dictating to us like he'd already captured us, like his grandfather and father captured Luxembourg. I mean, this is a guy that really thinks he owns the world.
Well, he is the crony of the Germans and of Mrs. Merkel. So in a sense, this whole cabal in Europe is a German conspiracy. I have some difficulty saying this, but it is almost like Germany has gained through the EU what it couldn't obtain in the Second World War. So they're controlling Europe, they're controlling the currency, they're controlling the institutions. Juncker is a crony of Merkel, and basically it's an organization that works to benefit Germany and its interests, which are not the same interests, obviously, of other nation states in Europe, and most certainly. And I say this, of course, as somebody who has been close to this over the last number of years, not something that the Americans should take lightly. We should look at this EU as a real challenger and not just as a benign friend.
Sure.
And actually a challenger.
And people overuse the Nazi thing, but Juncker really is the heir to like the second most powerful family in Germany during World War II, top Nazis. The Juncker aircraft that bombed England and Russia and everything else were made by his family. And he really is bringing forward a EU project that it's been declassified, as you know, was a Nazi program. They wanted a European Union. So he's just carrying on the family project, second most powerful family, arguably the most powerful Nazi family in World War II. And they run the EU, folks. Now, he basically thinks he owns Europe. He thinks he owns America. And this is the type of scum that we're facing. But we have patriots, like our guest, from the inside that are dynamiting it. Ted Malloch, tedmalloch.com is our guest. He's got a new book out we're going to talk about coming up in the next segment. And if you want to talk to somebody that's been at the highest levels of the Davos group, somebody that knows all the big world leaders, knows what the globalist plan was, and from the inside has been opposing it for over a decade, Ted's the guy to talk to. And it's just fascinating. We should have him on for like 3 hours someday if that doesn't exhaust him. But this is a short segment What hits me so hard is for decades, going back to Barry Goldwater and Ron Paul and myself and many others, they would make jokes like there's no globalism, there's no New World Order, while they were teaching it at colleges, while they were preparing it. And now that hoax has collapsed. And as soon as that hoax collapsed, it's game over. But if they would have just been building a real global community with a future to empower everybody, everyone would be for it. Because that's obviously the logical next step. And I just don't get that they're doubling down with violence and with Marxists in Europe and here and calling for violence and calling everyone Nazis that doesn't want to be part of this when literal Nazis launched their current EU-centric spoke to control globalism. So bottom line, there's a fight over who controls globalism. There's globalism, the economy that exists already. Then there's globalist, two separate things in my view. But it's just such an amazing time to be alive and to realize, as you said, this is the beginning of the renaissance or the break away from it. I guess my question or my rant is this: can they still defeat us? Are we being arrogant about the total tide shift? What are they planning from your best research?
Well, I don't think they're sitting on their hands. I think they have every intention to try to defeat us. You see that on the streets. You see that in the media. You see that in certain corporations who are captive to these globalists. So I don't think by any means they're going to go away, as Steve Bannon says, without putting up a fight. So we have to be equally adept in actual street fighters and take them on. And I think that we've been doing that, and it scares the bejesus out of them.
Okay, I've been asking the questions. We got a few minutes left in this segment. We'll get into your book in the next. But what else is big on your radar as we see the collapse, the capsizing of globalism?
Well, I think that you see them trying to take over all the institutions, of course, of our civic life, whether it's the schools, whether it's the culture, whether it's the media. I obviously spend most of my time with corporations as a corporate strategist. They've actually had an attempt over the last 20-odd years to have globalists as CEOs of all these companies, or many of these companies, such that they then have transnational corporations who have no attention then to the places where they do business. They're bigger and stronger, and in their views, better than the people who inhabit those places.
So really a corporate coup through corporate governance, but not to even empower free market. What would you call the system they were building? Kind of a technocracy where they're exempt from the socialist hell they put us under?
Well, they are elitists in every sense, and some of the rules that they make, they don't want to be bound by themselves, a little bit like the U.S. Congress. But yeah, they've built a system where they can fly around on their private jets and at the same time talk about climate change, and at the same time basically form a kind of crony capitalism, pretending to be philanthropists, giving away other people's money. So it's a very nice lifestyle.
Basically, they're a bunch of crooks that have bought off the establishment media and build themselves as angels.
And that's why people like you, Alex, are so dangerous, because you expose this. You and Drudge and all the other people on this side of the equation, and people who are in fact trying to defend free market capitalism, those people actually have to continue to make this case. And we have to, and I think there are more ears listening to what you're saying day in and day out.
Common Sense Business. We're going to break, but I certainly want to read this book. Just in 40 seconds, why have you become, in the last 30 years, behind the scenes, one of the top corporate advisors in the world?
Well, I like to think that I'm trusted by people with some analytical capacity, some good character, and some ideas that actually have come to fruition. But I've had the good luck and good fortune to be at the right place at the right time, and I've had very good mentors, and I would like to say God has been on my side.
I certainly don't want to be on the side the globalists are on. What a sad group of people. Boy, I tell you, we're going to talk about it all. The book, take a few of your phone calls with Mr. Malek straight ahead. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. We'll be right back. I remember it's probably a year ago or so, Dr. Jerome Corsi, who's got a bunch of #1 best-selling books and has a lot of great connections, a great guy, really hard-working fella. he's the reason Trump even found out about Arpaio and he got the pardon was, of course, he wrote articles that Drudge picked up. He said, yeah, I want to get Ted Malloch on. And, you know, big heavy hitter, advising corporations and part of the Davos group and all the rest of it. He's been fighting globalism from the inside for a long time. And I remember going and looking on Ted Malloch. I mean, that's the guy that, like, ran the big, what was it, Aspen Institute, and was one of the main members organizing Davos that became the most powerful group in the world and connected to all the big heavy hitters. And I knew he'd always promoted free market and stood up for American sovereignty. I knew there were good people in the system. Because as we really begin to win, folks, we have to understand we're going to have a lot more folks in the system that once they're able to really stand up and do more are going to appear. We're also going to see people who we think are our friends that are going to turn on us because of they're being blackmailed, they're being threatened. I mean, if you knew the stuff I've been through, and I'm not complaining, I asked for this, but let me tell you, it's like a James Bond movie, except I'm not as good looking as James Bond, and, you know, I fall on my ass. I mean, the stuff they've pulled, the things they've done, and a lot of people hear that and say, oh my gosh, I better not do anything. It's fun, okay? And it's better than being a slave. But what I'm getting at here is, as we get control of the government, and as we turn the economy back around, that's we the people. As we go back to the Americana system where it's not about elitism, it's about what you actually do and what you produce and what you stand for. As we become more chivalrous again, we get ready to win, folks. This whole hoax, this whole spell we've been under is a good allegory of being under this control can be lifted, and Trump's trying to lift it. He's real. They tried to demoralize us where we believed that there was nothing real. Let me tell you, it's been patriots in the Council on Foreign Relations and in the CIA and in the big universities that have known about this, who've been getting information out forever, and that have basically made sure that globalism now is falling apart. And that's because globalism proved it was a fraud. The globalism of the globalists, not global trade or global connections or global agreements. And so this whole system of secret TPP and screwing America over and dominating the host country is now coming to an end to a great extent. It doesn't mean things are going to be perfect. We're not like communists that offer some utopia, but I'm ranting. Let me stop now. It's just that this is a big crossroads. So before you get into your book, and the toll-free number so you can take a few calls for Ted Malloch specifically, 800, we don't screen on there, maybe some trolls, 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. First-time callers. Talk to a guy who academically and business-wise is at the highest levels and who has been strategically involved, according to all my sources, helping bring down this current authoritarian globalism. So you want to know who helped kick the switch? We the people, all of us together, one of the key people there helping kick the switch to reverse the tide is Ted Malloch. And we have to understand that we need to want people to come from the inside and fight it. But he didn't just flip sides the last 5 years. I learned about what he was doing 6-7 years ago. I just didn't know how extensive it was, and that for over a decade, he's been fighting the globalist plan. But if you talk to him, he's been doing it since the beginning. So thank God we've had folks that have been inside. So can you spend a few minutes just talking about your evolution, your awakening, how they sold globalism, when you went from just being somebody working inside that structure for American values to somebody that was actively fighting against it? What was that process like? Did it happen overnight? Was it instantaneous? Or did it happen over a long period of time?
Well, I think in my case, if we're talking, you know, and I have a personal memoir, so you know you can read about it in all of its grainy detail. It's called Davos, Aspen, and Yale: My Life Behind the Elite Curtain as a Global Sherpa. I basically, even as a young person and as an intellect growing up around Bill Buckley and Firing Line and National Review and the great books, was always inside the argument about conservative ideas, certainly about religion and culture, and about free market. So there was no turning point for me, no conversion. I happen to have had good fortune to be invited into a number of places that were prominent, I guess, establishmentarian. But even in those places, I tried to be, as the Bible says, light and salt, and to try to bring them into some kind of reason. That was oftentimes a frustrating experience. And there were certainly very strong countervailing forces.
Sure, but
Some
as
of
a
them
critic, I mean, you
Marxist,
became
some of
very,
them
very prominent, I guess, as being a critic, which is an example to folks that are just yes men. In a world of yes men, it's better to be a critic when something's corrupt.
I think you have to, otherwise you have no moral character, no backbone whatsoever. So you have to be able either to say no or to stand up or to criticize something, or if you're an academic.
But you become more of an aggressive critic in the last 5-6 years, just from what I've seen on the radar screen. I mean, is that accurate?
It is accurate that I have, I would say, in the last 10 years, and thanks to some mentors and some foundations, been able to write books that are much, much more critical than at an earlier point in your career where, you know, you're frankly trying to make a buck or get promoted or get to the next rung. So we're all guilty of that kind of careerism. But at this point, I mean, I'm able and willing, and of course I've been doing this both on shows like this and in print, to tell the truth about where we are and how we got there.
Have they tried to punish you?
Well, I mean, they've tried to politically assassinate me. Certainly, there are people in the American system, but more in the European side, who see me as their archenemy. They certainly didn't want me to be ambassador for Trump in the European Union because I would have taken them on and I would have made his case. What they want, and still want, they don't have an ambassador yet, is someone who will make their case back to the Americans and to Trump, as opposed to someone who will represent the American perspective and the American national opinion in Europe. So yeah, there are a lot of forces, particularly in the media, who take us on, who try to pigeonhole us and categorize us and make us out to say things that we're not saying. But they're particularly fearful of me because I know them from the inside.
That's right. In fact, well, I mean, I've seen the horrified reports, and then now, I mean, they wish you would just shut up, but the more they tell you to shut up, the more you speak. And it seems like the bullying, don't they get across the board, just of Trump supporters or nationalists or free market folks, that their no-holds-barred bullying has now only really gotten a lot of people off the couch and into a very, very aggressive stance? I think they took our kindness for weakness.
Well, I mean, we have, I think, fought back more so in this last period. And a lot of that, I think, is precipitated by the Brexit situation in the UK and by Mr. Brexit himself. I've mentioned him, Nigel Farage here, but even more so on the world scene by Donald Trump. So he is the persona, I think, that has really transformed the landscape. So you're looking at my bookcase right behind me. I'm very proud to have in one of these frames a letter from the Socialist Party and the Communist Party of the European Parliament that says I should be made, Ted Malloch should be made persona non grata, that I should not be able to have a political or a diplomatic appointment to their European Union.
And that's what I remembered. I was stretching back in my memory that major political parties, because communists are a major party in Europe, folks, are like trying to have you banned, saying you're not fit to serve, basically banning you from public life.
Oh, they would enjoy it if we would go away and just go back and sit on our hands, and if they could take you off the air and stop the publications of other publications, and then they could just go back to business as usual. But that's not the case.
You know, they've approached radio stations we're on and offered them huge sums of money to take us off through other programs. And they go, oh, we don't want that show. And they go, don't worry, any show, not even our show, just get him off. And I've learned behind the scenes they're doing stuff, you know, even at the network level, to sabotage, oh, you don't want Alex anymore. You know, carry something else. Yes, I'm aware of that. Just let folks know. So it's definitely hit next level. It's so intense. And I think as libertarians or conservatives or just Christian patriots, we don't tend to want to whine and say, oh, look, we're under attack. It's almost like it's an honor to be under attack. It is. But the listeners and viewers need to know, they don't want us speaking. They need to understand, just getting our articles, our videos, your book, getting these materials out is a revolutionary act. Here's an example. This is up on newswars.com, Adon Salazar, also prisonplanet.com. It's very important to get this out, because we were just talking about how they want to ban him from service, because a lot of folks want to try to have him be an advisor or an ambassador to the European Union via the United States. Trump's talked about that. speaking of his book, Common Sense Business, we're going to talk about in a moment. Librarian rejects racist Dr. Seuss book donated by Melania Trump. Yes, because she donated it at an event, they don't now want the book, period. Even if it's not the book she even donated. It's because she donated the book. It now, by extension, is racist, and he got to ban colleges, called Lynch, or halls called Lynch. A Cambridge, Massachusetts librarian refused several Dr. Seuss children's books donated by First Lady Melania Trump, claiming the content is steeped in racist propaganda. And it's, oh, the places you'll go where a bear-like creature gets to visit the world and excites kids about the future of the world. So now cartoon characters are now racist. This is mass insanity. What do you make of this, Ted Malloch?
Well, this is clearly a political act. I mean, she was making a donation of children's book. Innocent children's book. We all grew up reading these books and giving them to a library. And this librarian, I'm not saying she's an unqualified librarian, but she's she's a cultural Marxist, and she's basically saying, we don't want any of these gifts because they're coming from you. And then she makes all these categorical, comments.
And she wants the power to ban whatever she wants when she wants. And that's why the cultural Marxists, as you just said, pick asinine things. Because if they can get away with banning loving, sweet, totally non-racist books, they can ban anything.
Well, and they'd love to ban my book or your book or Jerome Corsi's books or any of the books that still are being published and people need to read and young people need to get their hands on.
Ted Malloch, let's talk about, and I'm going to take a few calls here, common sense business principles for profitable leadership. This is what everybody should be reading, not learning how to be an SJW, not learning how to, if people want to know how to be successful, stop having chips on your shoulders, have good attitudes, and then learn basic systems and then apply yourself. And the world's looking for you. If you'll just be professional, nice, courteous, focused, dedicated, you won't be able to help being promoted and being successful. You agree with that statement, Ted?
I do, but I think we need this kind of jolt, as I say, of common sense business today. And in the past, it came from President Reagan. Today, it's coming from President Trump. We saw yesterday an announcement of his tax plan. So we need policies, both at the national level and at the corporate level, that are prudent, principled, patient, and practical. And most importantly, and this is something we underline in this book, it's all about this, we need to let markets work. We need to defend capitalism again.
Now, Ted, before we go to some more of these phone calls, I haven't read the book yet, but I love it when books have actual great video trailers. I'm excited about it because I want to learn more about business myself. I just got into business to fund my political views, so I've never really went to any official school. But now I do read a lot of the better business people like yourself, and I've learned a lot from it, and it's made us innumerably more successful. So just give us the basic gist of the book, and I want folks to know, don't think of this as too highbrow. So many people never want to read something like this and think, oh, that's not for me. The basic principles you'll learn in something like this are transcendent. So just explain to people why they want to understand business. Because even if you're not officially yourself in your own business, understanding business and how businessmen think and women think is absolutely key to success.
Well, this is for all business people. It's for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses, for every sector. And frankly, for every country in the world, we need to learn how to do business on a prudent and principled basis. What we do is make this argument. We're very instructive, very informative. I co-authored this book with the former CEO and chairman of the world's largest private company, Cargill. And in the book, we give away a lot of the secrets of companies that have been very successful and very durable over very long periods of time. So on a macro level, it's a defense of capitalism. And on a micro level, it's about all these great examples of companies who have been doing it, so you can learn from those companies.
Sorry, folks who don't know, Cargill is the biggest private company in the world. And I've even seen Obama's regulators circulating around that one to get their fingers in there. And again, so many big globalist corporations that own slave factories in China, you name it, They'll always social justice warrior justice signal, virtue signal, but they won't actually ever give people the tools to catch fish. They'll make you beg for fish and then maybe give you, one bite if you sell your soul. But to have Cargill's CEO giving out these mega secrets, you can see capitalism, real capitalists understand they're in a death battle with the collectivists. We've got to bring out the heavy weapons and make sure people are so successful we finally kill this vampire of collectivism once and for all. That's a big deal to have the CEO of Cargill give people the secrets because, things like that could really be used by their enemies that haven't even figured those things out yet. So business secrets are really important. And so for people to be giving away the keys to the kingdom, I think it shows that capitalism that isn't evil understands that they've got to go to the thermonuclear option.
Well, we're talking about good capitalism. We're talking about the morality of the market. We're talking about how companies are extremely profitable over the long term based on these things that they do that, in fact, make them good companies. Just the opposite of what all these socialist professors have been preaching, not teaching, in business schools around the world.
That's right. They want to just tear everything down and then hand it out. It's like if you had a spaceship to go to a new planet, they want to tear down the spaceship and just for fun because it threatens them and then live like a bunch of savages instead of wanting to be part of this, great experiment. They just hate success and want to conquer the engine of success, even though they're going to destroy it so that they can claim that they're dominant when true dominance would be to simply empower humanity. There's no question free market capitalism, even though only a fraction of it has been realized, is thousands of times better than communism. Look at Venezuela. Look at Cuba. Look at all these countries. China's not communist. They've just adopted partial capitalism, and it's taken them a long way. I mean, can you, before we go to calls, a few minutes just on why the elites who made their money through capitalism, so many of them, and what percentage do you think it is, 60, 70%, still want to push collectivism? Is it because now they've gotten to this level, they want to use it as a tool of control? Or is it really that they're bleeding heart fools and are guilty and so want to somehow deploy a system they think will lift everybody up, even though all the science and history and business shows it does the opposite? I mean, are they useful idiots or are they authoritarians?
Well, there are probably some that fit in each of those camps. The problem is that too many of them are redistributionists. So what they're really trying to do is gerrymander a system where they can get rich, but they use the state then to give away everyone else's wealth such that they can then pretend to be do-gooders. And there are way too many of those kinds of globalists operative in the global economy. What we need is more entrepreneurs. We need people who are innovative, who are actually trying to build great companies. And I think, frankly, that operates, first of all, in the startups and in the medium-sized companies that America is famous for. 72% of jobs are created in those places. The tax code that we've been presented with yesterday is going to help incentivize that. We have got to get back to economic growth.
I'm going to take a few phone calls, but before we do in this last 10 minutes, Ted Malloch, tedmalloch.com, the new book, Common Sense Business. I'm going to read it, Principles for Profitable Leadership, giving you really some stuff that smart folks have developed over the years that families have handed down to try to energize the economy and escape the Cloward and Piven folks that want to bankrupt things so they can control it. I mean, that's their admitted paradigm. Any other little kernels of knowledge you want to impart to folks? Any messages you want to give to the dug-in globalists, the EU bureaucrats that exempt themselves from the very taxes they foist on their serfs?
Well, it'd be nice if they would give up their cause and just go back to real jobs, but they've got a cushy existence. I mean, if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros a year on a tax-free basis, and you spend half your day drinking beer and cocktails, and then pushing around paper, maybe having a real job is just too difficult.
And then they have disdain. I've always noticed parasites have disdain for the host. And I guess they have disdain for themselves, so they're projecting it on us. Dan in Kentucky, Peter in Texas, Dan in Ohio, Kay in Georgia, Phil in New Hampshire. We're going to go to all of you guys and gals right now. Let's go to Kay first. Kay in the great state of Georgia, you're on the air.
Hey, how are you guys doing? First, I wanted to read an Oscar Wilde quote I found yesterday I thought relevant to your conversation.
Sure.
It's, if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you. I'm a retired non-commissioned officer from the United States Army. I worked for many years in the intelligence community, and I've seen this whole thing go down over the past couple of years. I served for 10 years, and I went to Afghanistan twice. And at every stop, there's somebody standing in your way. We know where the bad guys are. We know what they're doing, but it's just the will of the people to stand up to the government so they can get the country back.
You know, that's what I've said, and that's what Lou Dobbs is now saying, that they're trying to break our will. And our will is rising, common sense will, to be prosperous, to be upright, to be decent, and not have a bunch of scum organize a system above us to siphon it off. And so I think we're reaching the tipping point of humanity finding their will again, because this is happening in Africa, Latin America, Asia. Is it something in the air, Ted Malloch? I mean, why is there such a, because you write about this, I'm not putting words in your mouth, such a global awakening?
Well, I'd like to thank this caller, first of all, for his service, which we don't do often enough. He's absolutely right, though. We are in both an information war and I would say a spiritual war against these forces of darkness, of evil, and of globalism. And more of us are rising up against it. And I think everywhere in the world, at least the places I'm traveling, I'm seeing that sentiment.
Kay, anything else?
Yes, sir. The reason I gave that quote was because when I was in Afghanistan, I was embedded with the local police and the local army doing raids and such, and they could have killed us. I mean, there was nothing standing between.
But you made them there. You were friends, and you guys made jokes, and you were friends, right?
I learned their language. I spoke with them. I told them about America and evangelized based on our system. It's so great, and people don't understand that all we need is this entrepreneurial spirit to take over back in the country, and we're going to go off. I mean, my dad didn't come here from Iran to see the country get destroyed in 1978. This place is going crazy, and we need to take it back.
That's right. We have to have the optimism, and that's what Trump's done. That's his big crime. It's not that he's racist. They hate him because he's optimistic. He's celebrating plumbers and firefighters and farmers and just average folks and making it about America again. That's what Alexander de Tocqueville talked about, is just celebrating our humanity, getting away from bowing down to elitism. Mr. Malloch?
The glass is never half empty. It's always half full. And I think that Trump has reignited this spirit, not just to make America great again, but to actually give the American people the power to be great in their own self-awareness, in their self-experience, in their self-expression, and I would argue in the companies that they're going to build, because I'm really enthusiastic about the American economy looking into the near future.
Kay, thanks for the call. Maybe Ted can do 5 more minutes the next hour, but then we've got the other big guest joining us. But I want to get to more of your calls, but I've got to say this. They said he'd never get 3.0 growth rate. It's 3.1. And to see the Democrats actively upset that the economy's turning back on, that's why Trump's approval ratings, even with skewed polls, are just going straight up, is because the Democrats are literally like gremlins trying to sabotage a recovery. I mean, don't they get how that looks?
It's the most disappointing thing, to see these gripers who are either trying to, stall the economy or to keep legislation from getting through, or frankly, to resist Trump on every turn. All the president wants to do is to have the American people thrive again. So why can't we just, as Rush Limbaugh said last night, why can't we just for the next 3 or 4 months join arms together, pass this legislation, and get on with it?
And that's what Limbaugh said is key. They want the president to fail, and they're public about it. And he wants all of us to fail, no matter what color we are. Bobby in Tokyo, got about a minute and a half before we got a break. You're on the air with Mr. Malloch. Go ahead.
All right, greetings.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Bobby.
So globalism is always kind of on the borderline, but there seems to be a good globalism, a bad one. Like my father is heavily involved in, I'm a lawyer myself, in intellectual property, and that we want to use it so that all of us can find a good way to develop new business.
I tell you what, Bobby, stay there. I went to you late. We're going to go to break. Ted, can you do 5 more minutes after this break?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And then we've got a guest, Brandon Tatum. 50+ million views on his video about the NFL. He's joining us. This guy's amazing, too. He's coming up in about 6-7 minutes. We'll be back. I'm Alex Jones. Spread the word. Look, if you go back 70, 80 years ago, they said the international man or the people that knew how to go to different countries, have different businesses, travel the world, that's a great thing. And then the globalists sold themselves as humans working together and all the rest of it. Globalism is this global group of technocrats controlling everybody and then having secret agreements and secret groups and exempting themselves. That's the globalism we want to defeat. Bobby, I think you're getting at the point that we have to have copyright law where everybody's going to steal each other's inventions. But it has to be transparent. It has to be public. The countries have to be there as units of that, as firewalls to an authoritarian global government. That's where I'm going with this. Bobby, real quick comment, then I'm going to go back to Mr. Malik.
Yeah, so I'm from Tokyo, and I wish that Ted Malik would be our Minister of Foreign Trade and so forth, because we're so incompetent here. But one of the main points that I'm concerned about, which I'm interested in, is that with regards to North Korea, and it's related to Steve Pachinek's point, in that, North Korea is already starving and nearly dead. And nobody seems to be interested in keeping that area alive. Why not? It wouldn't be an amazing feat for the United States if, Donald Trump would fly over there, say, "Hello, Rocket Man," and Rocket Man says,
"No, I agree, because as bad as I hate the communists, the people are slaves. They're totally brainwashed. It's a very, let's ask Ted Malik. That's a great question. What would you do about North Korea? Because, they're so belligerent. They're threatening all these attacks. I don't want a new war, but, what do we do?
Well, the problem is we've tried everything for more than 20 years, and we've given away the shop. Economic sanctions have, for the most part, either not been sufficient or have not worked. The allegation is that the Chinese and possibly the Russians control the economy, so you need their full cooperation in order to really put the screws to the North Korean situation. I'm not sure that there is a military scenario, but I think we have to keep that scenario on the table and hopefully come to a point where either they come to their senses, but because they're so irrational, I don't think that's likely. We'd have to hope that there could be, and maybe incent, regime change.
I agree with you, and really sell a new plan with Russia and China and the North to economically build them up, but they have to give the weapons up, agree, stop, have maybe a 10-year reunification plan. Instead, they just seem to be getting crazier and crazier with Kim Jong-un just firing missiles over Japan and threatening preemptive attacks. I got 4 children. I don't want nuclear war. I know the Russians and China are involved. But at the same time, this isn't like it's Iraq or something. This is a real lunatic threatening to nuke us.
Well, that is in fact the case, and he actually has some of those weapons now and some of the delivery systems. So if you put the two together, you can look at the circle or the arc of his possibilities, and it's quite frightening. So we'll see. This might all end rather badly in a fiery way, as the president has said. But I do want to say that you're absolutely right, and we're in total agreement. And the caller, I think, has made this point. Globalism is the problem, not world trade, not relations between people, not the nature of give and take between nations. Globalism is an ideology. It's actually an immanentizing of the eschaton. It's trying to bring heaven on earth, which actually violates the first.
It's global redistribution by a bunch of pointy-headed bureaucrats who become gods.
So we need to call out globalism for what it is. And that's what I've been doing these last few years.
An unelected authoritarian group of people on a power trip. Ted Malik, the new book, Common Sense Business Principles for Public Leadership. Everybody should get it. Let's talk more often. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
Great, Alex. Take care.
Get ready. Brandon Tatum. Tell everybody on Twitter and Facebook he's coming up. It's Friday, the 29th day already of September 2017. And if you're watching us on television, there he is, Brandon Tatum. Last time I checked, like 50-something million views in just 4 or 5 days on his Facebook channel that we're going to put on screen for folks as well. But this is what's exciting. As the silent majority of every color, we're all the same race, the human race, all red blood, all want freedom for our children, all want a future, unless we're globalist, I guess, speaking out and just exploding and getting now I guess over 100,000 followers on Facebook, and they haven't banned him yet. But I was talking to other folks that have been sharing his video, and they say, yeah, they've seen it blocked. Let me tell you, in 6.5 minutes, this is a video I showed my children, because they hear about this NFL stuff, and they're little kids, and they're like, now what's going on with white people and black people? Because in my school, we all get along. What's happening? Or a lot of my friends are just black and white, or like they're confused. They're innocent, and they don't know what my 9-year-old daughter doesn't know what's going on. I've got a daughter that's also 5 months old, 4.5 months old. She doesn't know all this stuff, and she's going to grow up, just tries to watch a football game. It's not family friendly anymore, and he just lays it all out better than I could do. And then I found out more about him. Former athlete, University of Arizona, current police officer in Arizona, born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. It's always great folks from Texas, I got to just say. And went to Paul Lawrence, Dunbar High School, All-American high school player. And, of course, he is a great patriot as well. And so at the Officer Tatum, and, of course, Facebook.com/TatumBug34, YouTube.com/BTCruiser34. But let's play a few minutes of the video that's got over 50 million views last time I checked. He's got a bunch of other viral videos as well. Here's a few minutes of it.
All right. I wasn't going to talk, but now y'all done made me talk. So look, this is my whole thing about this protesting and this taking a knee on the flag. For all you people who just seem to not understand, let me clarify this for you, okay? It's not about the act of protesting. It's not about the act of believing in something and pursuing it. It's the way you're doing it. I don't know how many times people have to say this. Listen, what does the American flag have to do with your perceived oppression? What does the national anthem have to do with these issues that people are bringing up? It is a separate issue. The flag and the national anthem has nothing to do with what you're talking about. You're talking about an anthem of hope and unity within this country that have made people become great, that have made the poor become rich and give people opportunities. You're just talking about a flag that represents hard work, dedication, blood, sweat, and tears, sacrifice. And the thing that makes me most upset is that you have these people who turn around and take a knee and want to attribute all the negativity to the flag and the anthem, but don't want to attribute the positive. Listen, if you feel that the American flag represents negativity and slavery and all this other stuff, then you have to give credit and credence to a flag that have given you an opportunity to go from cornfields and picking cotton to being the president of the United States of America. Going from being segregated, can't go to proper schools, can't vote, taking you from that point to now you're making millions of dollars to play sports. And you know who's watching you? White people. I'm sick of y'all coming up with these lame excuses. The reason why America isn't, listen, Martin Luther King had support, you could call it bipartisan support. He had support on both sides, from people in the movement and people outside of the movement, because he did it with respect. He did it without robbing Peter to pay Paul. He did it with integrity. He did it with a mission. He did it with tangible goals that were achievable through hope, faith, and dedication.
It's powerful, but we've got him live right here, so I'm going to stop right there. We've got some other videos I want to get to, and it's confusing because you go to his channel, it's got 13 million views. On another channel, it's got 41 million views last night, and I still can't figure out Facebook, because I'll see one of my videos with like 100,000 views and 1 million over here. Paul Watson will have 37 million over here, and I've got 1 million over there. I mean, it's crazy how it works, but we've shown those to you yesterday with it 41 million views, and then a bunch of others. It is just absolutely crazy. So let me just ask him out of the gate. First off, it's great to have you here, and I love the internet age because I get to learn about all these cool people out there who are all one race, the human race with red blood, like Martin Luther King talked about, and all the eloquence of white people, black people, Asian folks, Hispanics, everybody, and all the great food, and all the great literature, and all the great movies, and just the true diversity that brings us all together instead of the left and the globalists telling us how bad we are all day and trying to hijack football. But people want to just go escape with their families. I don't want to hear all this stuff when I'm watching football. You know, they're hijacking it. They're taking it over, like Steven Seagal said. Just to have you there, though, it just makes me feel good, Brandon, and so many other incredibly eloquent people, because you said in 6.5 minutes what I've been trying to say just perfectly. So it's amazing to have you here with us.
Well, thanks, Alex, man. I enjoy your show. I love your energy, and I'm excited to be here for sure.
And I know you're kind of getting ready to go on duty and stuff, so you only got about 30 minutes with us. Instead of me asking the questions, what finally got you to go public? What finally got you to start speaking out like so many other silent majority people?
I don't know, man. I feel like that I have an obligation to people. I have an obligation to this country. I have an obligation to my family to just keep it 100% real. And I felt like that when truth is revealed to me, I mean, I would be doing a disservice to people to not express that. And also the frustration is what caused me to start coming out, because I couldn't hold it in anymore, that I felt like I've been lied to. And now the truth that's been revealed, I have to say something about it at all costs.
I don't mean to obsess over this, but I spent hours the other day trying to count it up, just because I go through the same thing. But the Super Bowl has like 80 million views. I counted up the copies of your video. It was like 50-something million a day and a half ago. Do you know how many views it's got?
I don't have a clue. I mean, I think I seen the views that you spoke about. I think it was 41 million and then about 13 million on my page. And I've seen a few other pages that have had 1 million here and there. So I'm saying at least 60 million or 60 or 70 million views.
One guy in his car. What does that say to the entire NFL, Hollywood, all of them? Colbert doesn't have 60 million views in a month. I mean,
that's true. That's true. I think what it says is that this is, like I tell people, it's not about me. It's not that I'm such a great spokesperson. It's that God has put me in a position to have a platform to speak on behalf of other people. And I think that America spoke by a guy sitting in the car, you know, spewing out his heart, and millions and millions of shares of that one video. It speaks to what America really feels.
Well, I'm not kissing your ass. It's true. Excuse that. I'm going to stop even using my old stuff, folks. I apologize to stations. You just walked through it all perfectly. I get so angry because there's so much. I can't say it all, but you were somehow able to just... I start stuttering. I get so angry. I don't know how you just laid it out so smooth.
Yeah, I think, you know, the funny thing about it, and people may call me crazy, but I talk all the time. I talk to myself. I talk to other people who are available to listen to me. So what happens is I ramble about this stuff all day long. And then when I get on a video, this is stuff that I have already been saying to myself. So I think it comes out smoothly after I'm on a video because I've been harping about it, you know, all day long.
It's incredible. We just found another video where it's 42 million views. I mean, it's just crazy. And again, they have red carpets and Oscars for movies that 10 million people see. And so I'm just showing how obsolete they are now that all this competition has come. And then that's only one part of the story. Then there's the whole story about what you said. And then the NFL is trying to double down, even though at first they said, okay, we may back off. Now they want to double down. And people are, and they're trying to get black folks to get into this. And this polls show they're not buying it. What is the NFL thinking?
I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if this is some kamikaze mission or what. I think what it is it's the liberal mentality. I feel like that these people are being, you know, tricked into, brainwashed into, forced into, shamed into acting this way. I think a few players decided to do something, and these owners are afraid of the backlash that they'll get from minority communities if they actually stand up for what's right. I have no idea what they're thinking about. This should not be happening in America.
You know, it's funny you say that. I was looking over here. They're now reporting that the there wasn't one sack last year against the Raiders quarterback, but because he was the only guy that wouldn't take a knee, that the defensive line let him get sacked over and over again. And now the word is players are speaking out and saying, yes, they did let him get attacked. That is next level if they did that, because we saw this other Army Ranger fella who came out and put his hand over his heart, but they threatened to fire him. So he said, I apologize. I'm ashamed of America, basically. Talk about, I mean, imagine the bullying they're going through. That itself is so un-American.
No, it is, man. You know, to be honest, I've been in locker rooms before. I know the pressure of wanting to be a part of a team. And you guys love each other. You know, as a team, you fight for each other. You work out together. You have a season. You have goals. I understand that dynamic. And this kid pretty much fell victim to that. He wanted to stand up for something, but this mob team-like mentality, you know, forced him into saying, okay, you're the outcast, man. You're not with us. And his love for the game and love for the team, he had to come out, as shameful as it is, he had to come out and apologize.
Apologize that he did his own thing, because that's separate from the game, to go out and put his hand over his heart. You can do anything you want now. You can even, one guy simulated pissing on the president when he made a touchdown. That's okay. But you can't go out and put your hand over your heart. It's incredible. Brandon Tatum is our guest, police officer, patriot. The Officer Tatum on Twitter, Facebook, TatumBug34. And that's where you go see 13 million views. Go to other channels, 5 million here, 2 million there, 42 million here. I mean, it's just crazy. And again, that's just one of his videos. The other videos have millions. That shows folks love that truth. We'll be back.
It works. That's not how any of this works.
I noticed the NFL commissioner last Saturday, when Trump said, stop disrespecting America and our veterans, he said, no, you disrespected the NFL. The arrogance, and there's this arrogance in Hollywood, and it's invaded television, sports, and it's really shameful that they're so disconnected, thinking they want praise from mainstream media, when the man we have on, Brandon Tatum, has over, I agree with him, 60+ million views on one video he did, tens of millions of others on the other videos he did. That's bigger than all of them combined, but they don't care. They have this arrogance. It's like a force field they wear, but they don't get we've woken up to them, so they throw bigger and bigger fits. The economy's coming back. They're panicking. They don't know what to do. So now they're calling for killing cops. Big article, drudgereport.com, Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. They're meeting in these basements. We've had undercover people inside them as well. My concern is these crazy people think they're invincible and are about to throw a big, violent, Charlie Manson-style temper tantrum. And as a police officer, Brandon Tatum, what do you think of this?
I don't know. You know, in situations like this, which is obviously like a national security issue, I think that our government should be able to handle these on a local level. I mean, we just have to be resilient. You know, we have to be, you know, watch our back, keep each other safe, make sure that we're up on our training. You know, where I'm from or where I patrol, we haven't had any extreme activities, so I don't anticipate that happening where we're at. But we're always vigilant, man, because you just never know. Just like in Dallas, they're doing a protest, and then a lunatic starts shooting people. So, I mean, there's definitely a risk of some of these things. We probably don't have the information to know where it's coming from, but we always stay vigilant and prepared.
Sure, I was about to say, but Trump has only gotten a few levels below him in. This is deep state running this against the president. That's why I think it's so dangerous, because you're saying, yeah, the higher-ups, the feds, should be handling this, but we had, a month ago, we had folks on that had investigators just privately doing it inside the events. They're giving the feds the videos, people handing out the guns, saying we're going to kill cops, we're going to launch this coming up the next few months, and then nothing happens.
Right, that's a little concerning for me, because I've seen some of the videos. You know, some people may want to act like it don't exist, but I've seen the videos of them meeting in basements, of them having their little tactical plan of trying to train to fight and equip themselves. I've seen videos of them coming with masks and batons, and, you know, where's the funding coming from? It's a huge issue, and you just wonder, at what point do we leave political correctness and we start really looking at these issues, because these individuals, although it may not be in the city I work in, they're clearly an issue around the country. And a lot of people are pushing for them to be a hate group or a terrorist group. And I don't know why we haven't had that accomplished and had that widespread.
And they keep calling everybody Nazis when they dress like Nazis.
Right. I mean, these people, they're terrorists. They look like terrorists. They dress like terrorists. They suppress speech. They burn buildings. They burn property. So, you know, I'm not an expert on this. Just as a regular basic citizen, I can tell with my own two eyes that there's obviously something going on here, and it appears that the government isn't really taking it serious for political correctness.
I'll tell you what's going on. I've talked to a lot of high-level sources, and I've seen it, my friend, Brandon. They're going to use these people as the cover as an attempt at a violent overthrow. That's why they got the NFL to do all this. You have counter-strike bigger than all of us combined, quite frankly, except for the president. He's had a bigger reach, but you're like number 2 now fighting this. But you think you've been even more powerful because it just neutralizes all their propaganda. But you look at this, they've got some special teams and people involved in this. Soros and others have done this in other countries. They want to use these idiots as their decoy cover for what they really do. They're planning something big.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, anybody can look at these videos that you're showing. They've been spread around the internet. I mean, somebody would have to explain to me, why are they covering their faces? Why are they in these secret meetings? I mean,
I've had the FBI and Secret Service here like 10 times, and I never called for violence, asking me if I'm planning violence. So why are these people still walking around calling for killing cops and beating people on the head with bike locks? I mean, why?
It's this mentality of political correctness. I mean, I'm telling you, you can go out and you can say, I hate police officers. You can say, I hate white people. It's almost as if you could go out and do that, and it's kind of pacified, like you get a pass. And at some point in this country, and I think Trump is doing a good job at trying to get it back in full circle, at some point, we're going to have to get to the point where we say, look, if it's wrong, we need to call it wrong. If it's right, we need to call it right. And I'm telling you, like, I think that you have a lot more knowledge in this than I do, but as a regular, everyday person, this is concerning to me.
It is. Stay there. I want to ask you what Martin Luther King, as you said, would say about this. Because all you're saying is what he would say. We'll be back.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state.
So it was Martin Luther King that famously said, you judge people by the character of their deeds and their conscience of what they do. Well, that's how you judge clothing. It's how you judge cars. It's how you judge food. It's how you judge your mate. It's off people's performance. But they've turned that around now, the Democratic Party and the globalists, to make it about, no, what group you're in. Well, we're Americans. And then they want to attack that symbol that they know Trump's using to unify people. And it's in the WikiLeaks. It's very, very cold-blooded. So Brandon Tatum is with us another 10 minutes or so. I really appreciate him joining us. I'm very excited about him agreeing on his own dime. I'm like, no, we want to pay for it. He's a police officer to fly out here and be on the show in studio next Friday. Follow him on Facebook and on Twitter at The Officer Tatum, on Facebook.com/TatumBug34, YouTube.com, BTCruiser34. Now, I want you to talk about what you want at the time we've got left here. But during the break, we were talking, so one more question about Antifa, their plans for a civil war. We were getting more into that. where you think it's going, what's behind it, and what you think they're going to do next. And then separately, just the NFL, the players are being told to do this. This is a big PR thing through Hollywood. They think it's, the only thing they have left. They're so desperate. And the left doesn't know when to stop. They don't know when they're destroying themselves. So I want to get your take on all that. Just give you the floor, Brandon, for the next 10 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate you having me on again. No, I think that, I'm kind of, to a certain degree, I'm kind of glad that they're doing some of these things because they're digging their own grave. I think that we can obviously see that the American people are starting to separate themselves from this foolery. Every 5 minutes you turn around, they're calling somebody a racist. They're calling somebody a homophobe, to the point where now they're desensitizing the words. And when people actively are homophobic, when people are actively racist, it's going to go overlooked. We can't even define the true racists and the true homophobic people and the true bigots of this country because they're labeling good, decent people as being bad. So, I mean, like you talked about with the Antifa and all this other stuff, like at first it sounded like it was working well for them, but now it's starting to backfire. Now, when Antifa is showing up in gear, I even saw on CNN and some of the other stations that they're now condemning these people. They're now saying, no, these people are violent. These people are coming to these rallies looking for trouble. So a part of me is glad that this is happening because the liberals and these people who are far left are just eliminating themselves from ever getting elected, ever having positions of power because they're just so engulfed in the foolery. And I'm wondering, and this is a thing that I wonder all the time. I wonder what is stimulating this? Because some of these people who are politicians, who are smart, intelligent people with degrees, life experience, they're literally saying things in the public sphere that they know are not true. These people know that Donald Trump is not a racist. These people know that they were supporting him and they were friends with him and they were having drinks with him a long time ago. And now that he is challenging the establishment, now they want to come against him. Now they want to make claims against him. Now they want to lie about him. Now everything that he say, they want to be misconstrued on every level. He can't even be a patriot. The man can't even say that he want America to be together on something. Because if he say that, they're going to say, oh, this is the America that you want is the white supremacist America. And I think people are getting fed up with it. Me, I used to be a Democrat. My whole life I was taught to be a Democrat. I voted for Barack Obama, his second term. And I came to the realization that I had made a mistake when I started looking at my values of being a Christian, of being conservative. I'm not for, gay marriage or abortions and all of this other stuff. That's not what I'm for. I stick with the principles of the Bible. It doesn't mean I don't love people. I love everybody because that's what the Bible teaches. But to interject that stuff into society without it being unchecked is something I don't agree with.
Exactly, especially when it's targeting children.
Right, exactly. I think, I'm gonna add this part. With the, and I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole, but these things are really affecting our society.
No, go down a rabbit hole. That's why we got you here.
Yeah, I know. This is the perfect place, huh? But listen, what happened is I've seen these people interject the gender confusion into young kids who I think is basically child abuse. As a young kid, you don't even know how to stop peeing in the bed. So how are you going to know what your gender is and who you love and who you identify?
And when an adult, my parents didn't talk to me about sex till I hit puberty or other people, and they got some teacher talking to my 5-year-old about sex?
Yeah, it's crazy. And like you said, and I honestly, this is me being completely honest. I think people watch your show and they say, oh man, this guy's crazy. But you make points that we need to actually look at. Because why all of a sudden it's acceptable to interject that into the minds of a young kid? Why is it acceptable to be racist towards white people in this day and age? We're like, what's stimulating this? Because there is no leader, no independent leader that I can point to other than Barack Obama to say that this person was leading us down.
It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. It's in the WikiLeaks. They said the elites losing control. We need class warfare. And the biggest way to have class is Americans like wealth, so that's kind of hard to do. And the Democrats are so rich, they don't make it about money, so they're going to make it about race. They're just getting us to fight with each other while they run off with the loot.
Right. That's exactly what's happening. Because you can watch it. These people are not affected by this, but they then put this energy, they put this negativity on us, like you and I. They want me to believe that you hate me and I hate you so that we can't work together to establish something positive. As long as we're hating each other, we're not going to communicate with one another, and then they can pander to us separately. And this is exactly what they're doing. And if anybody was to deny that, I would ask them to bring up some legitimate facts to disprove kind of the point in what we're saying here.
Well, they can argue with you, Brandon. And again, I get back to this. It's not about red carpets or kissing in anybody's rear end, but you speak, and it makes such sense. You get 60+ million views in what now is 5-6 days. And that's just one of your videos. I didn't have time to count up all the others. Millions and millions there. Again, we have to keep announcing we're the winners. People agree with us. It's common sense. The real mark that the average person isn't racist and isn't addled by that and handicapped by obsessing on other people all day, and it's an excuse for them not to be successful, be they black or white. We all know losers that do it. The big issue is that we should look at the fact that in the real realm of ideas, you're the Super Bowl winner. In the real area, I mean, by this weekend, you're going to have more views than the Super Bowl did last year. I mean, you know, and you didn't get paid anything for that. That's what's crazy is that what we say is what everybody knows, and then they keep telling us, no, you're the minority of folks that don't want to buy into all this stuff. No, we're the majority, and we're not black, we're not white. We got red blood. We love God. We want justice. We want to live in peace. We want to be able to watch a football game without a bunch of craziness where my kids are going, what is this? Like I have my kids asking, what did I do? And it's just, and again, I go, they want to put guilt on you so that you follow the government and these globalists. And I said, the people on the field are puppets. And you know, that's a point you've made. They just want to do it to be trendy. And then you learn, imagine the bullying that went on in those games where you've got black players, Hispanic players, white players, and others, and quarterbacks that are getting physically attacked, not being protected because they did what was right. Imagine the stories we don't know. Imagine what we don't know, Brandon Tatum.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine that. This is just, I mean, then you put in the fact that there's millions and millions of dollars. I could only imagine an owner coming down in the locker room and telling the star quarterback, hey, you need to promote this agenda. You need to say this. You need to say that. You need to act like this, or you will not have a job. And I know Colin Kaepernick is a perfect example of the fact that if they don't want to deal with you, they will not hire you. Now, deservingly so for him because he's a distraction. And
they used him to detonate it, then threw him away.
Right. It's almost like they're passing out signals. Like, listen, this will happen to you. We are in control here. If we don't want you,
and notice that quarterback said no and put his hand over his heart, so they let him get more sacks than he had the last 3 years previous. In one game.
That's funny. That's funny. To be honest, like I couldn't even imagine a person actually doing that. But in this day and age, with this type of bizarre behavior, I cannot disprove that unless I actually, had some facts surrounding it. I wouldn't say that that's not a true statement.
I was about to say, it's not 100% confirmed. We know no sacks of the quarterback last year, and the same offensive line let him get sacked. I mean, I've got the piece here. Since we said it, let's just play it. Let's play it. Did Raiders throw NFL game over anthem? Armstrong and Getty radio show. This is the new report dealing with the game. Here's a clip.
So this is a scandal. If it's true, and we have it on pretty decent authority that it is, this is one hell of a scandal with the NFL. Could ruin the league. What are we talking about? It involves the whole kneeling thing. Stay tuned to the Armstrong and Getty show.
So I'm quoting from the San Jose Mercury News, talking about what each NFL team did during Sunday's national anthem during these troubled and divided times. The entire offensive line of the Oakland Raiders, the only line in the NFL made up entirely of African-American players, was joined by virtually the entire team in kneeling or sitting during the anthem.
And one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, we understand, which is key to this story.
Oh, yeah, they are amazingly effective. Derek Carr was sacked once last year? It's an amazingly seldom. I mean, they did not let Derek Carr get tackled until he got his leg broken. Anyway, I've studied the photographic evidence. There were a couple of black guys on the team who were not sitting, but virtually the entire team was sitting. Head coach Jack Del Rio was standing. Quarterback Derek Carr standing.
While his offensive line was kneeling.
And the offensive line reportedly had led the whole we're going to sit thing. Football fans may be ahead of us now. The offensive line protects the quarterback. The original plan, by the way, was to stay in the locker room, but the NFL said no, because the schedule, we're kicking off right after the anthem, so you have to go out. So the offensive line said, we're going to sit. So Derek Carr, who was never sacked last year, was sacked 4 times by the Redskins, back-to-back on the second series, offensive series of the Raiders. The first series, he threw almost immediately an interception. So that series was over before it began. So for the first full series, he was sacked twice, back-to-back plays.
And I had said no sacks. I guess it was 1 sack. I mean, that to me is pretty obvious. And it just shows the insanity of all this, the people being used by this as this power play on the field, when it's this field and these fans that are literally loving you and you think they hate you. And that's a point you also made, Brandon Tatum.
Well, yeah. Back to the story. I mean, that's definitely something I would have to look into and look at the film. I think it can be verifiable. It can either go one way or the other. We can verify if that is actually true, if we actually had the film and you can look at blocking schemes and you can look at stunts and blitzes from the defense, because there is a possibility that they just got their butts kicked and they gave up sacks because they were getting whipped. And you know what? I won't, unless I see the film, I can't say that it wasn't a scheme and they didn't let that happen. People in the NFL take steroids and do all kinds of stuff. So I'm not going to say that this is just far beyond the ethical values of a team.
Sure, absolutely.
I find it very hard to believe, but before I take that stretch, I would say I want to look at the film and see that they just get their butts kicked, or were they maliciously doing something crazy?
Well, Brandon Tatum, I completely agree.
With my own eyes.
You never took us down a rabbit trail. I did today, just because I thought it was so interesting. But we know it's the people pulling the strings that are behind this. And what's it like for you to know that 60+ million views of one video that you did, and that now you, other than Trump, are like the voice of the American people?
Yeah.
On this issue.
I think it's funny, but you know what? This is an example, like you said. We're right and they're wrong. It's the bottom line. They use media, they use these big organizations to beat it in our heads that everybody hates Trump, that everybody loves this virtual signaling that's going on, when in reality, I mean, I don't have to say nothing. The views themselves speak for. If we were wrong, and most Americans believe that the NFL was doing the right thing, or they believe that Donald Trump was a bad guy and a racist, if that was true, I wouldn't have got 60 million views on a video that I made in my car in the garage, and Donald Trump wouldn't be president today. I'm just keeping it 100% real. This is not, no one can combat that. And I think that as conservatives, as people who are on our side, I think that we have to start remembering, look, we're winning this game. We're up by 30 points. They're using trick plays and shenanigans, and they're on the sideline cheering, kind of like Hillary Clinton was doing. They're on the sideline cheering, but they're losing.
Exactly. It's all games, man. I tell you, you're my favorite talk shows, even though you're not one yet. I hope to get you to be one at least part time, my friend. You're made for it. Listen, the Officer Tatum on Twitter, Brandon Tatum, I love you. Can't wait to give you a hug next week here in studio.
All right, definitely. Thanks for having me on.
I know you got to get on duty, so thank you, sir. He told us he only do 30 minutes, but he did 40 minutes. Thank you so much, Mr. Tatum. Wow, that was powerful. We're going to come back with Doug Hagman, who first broke over a month ago, the Antifa meetings where they're planning violence with his undercovers. That's now confirmed in video on drudgereport.com and newswars.com and an Infowars.com story about Paul Watson. I didn't plug last hour. I skipped 2 breaks. I'm completely out of control. We need money. In fact, I'm our own worst enemy sometimes. We need money to hire more reporters and more people. I need a lot of money. This is very expensive to do this. We have all these enemies. We got the best products, the best water filters, the best air purifiers, the best supplements. Caveman 50% off. That's going to end soon. The new special Vitamin Mineral Fusion 50% off. I'm not going to belabor it. Get 10% off. You sign up for auto ship. It's a great deal. It's great products, but it doesn't matter. Commit, buy it. It's a donation. We need your support right now because I've been dropping the ball, not plugging, as you've all heard. I mean, I'm just so excited with all these guests and what's happening. It's hard for me to do it. InfoWarsLive.com. We need your support. Thank you. All right, I want to move quick because we got to him 15 minutes late. I had to pull him out of a meeting with investigators and lawyers about how they can even use the bombshell stuff they've got. And he was the first guy I know, even before the current head of Blackwater and XZ came out with the same info about the pedophile rings in New York and the situation with now convicted child pervert, underage pervert Weiner. And, of course, that's Doug Hagman. But let me just say this about Brandon Tatum. Out of nowhere, 60 million views, one video, tens of millions the other videos, and he's just super... When I say articulate, the left's always like, oh, you mean a black guy's articulate? You're being condescending. No, I mean more articulate than me, a lot more. So not patronizing, the opposite. Like, let people have success. And then he's a listener for years. It's humbling because it lets me know I see that everywhere where I don't do the best job sometimes. But I'm the first a lot of times to get info out because I'm willing to be attacked. And then people resonate, they research it, and we have victory. So our greatest successes are the talking points, which are based in reality and research. Speaking of that, I'm not going to play it because of time constraints, but Doug Hagman was on, the 26th, 25th, we can put it on screen. I forget the exact date. We had it up earlier, and said my sources around the country that he sent out and paid for. That's how serious this is with his investigations group. Around the country, said they're getting weapons, they're planning violence, they've got sophisticated folks handling them. That now has all broke a month and 3 days later, exactly as he said, with Louder, with Crowder, InfoWars, other reports. And the police are thankful, but aren't even allowed to arrest people. And then the school officials cover it up on these universities. So, Hagman, what you reported over a month ago here is now breaking, and I'm sure you have a lot more info since the month passed.
Yeah, Alex, and thanks. Yeah, it's going to get even worse. What is taking place? Oh, by the way, in Austin tomorrow there is a meeting of Refuse Fascism. If I can say this, from 3 to 5 p.m. at Genuine Joe's Coffee House, right there in Austin on West Anderson Lane. So if anyone wants to drop by just to see what Refuse Fascism local group Austin's doing, there it is, Genuine Joe's Coffee House. But we're seeing these meetings these organizational meetings all over the country. But what's most disturbing here, in addition to, of course, the funding that goes back to Alliance for Global Justice in one case, and of course all of the normal groups, the Soros-connected groups, we're seeing some funding that's a degree or two separation away from the Organizing for Action, Obama's group. And I say that with some reservation, but when you start to unwind the money trail here, and that's what we do, is follow the money, we can see where the Organizing for Action is part of this, as well as, in one case, one of the very well-known opposition research groups that provided the DNC and the Democrats information about Donald Trump and specifically Donald Trump, is actually sharing some office space with a local Refuse Fascism chapter.
Oh, yeah, we know Soros and Obama are on record funding and protecting it. And the question is, what does Trump do to deal with it, or what do we do?
Well, we've been dealing with local police departments. The federal, under Sessions, it's been very difficult to establish a beachhead where we can give them information with the Sessions Justice Department, which I find very difficult to comprehend. So we've been dealing with the local and state authorities on this, on the ground level, and they've been very receptive taking our information, because what we're seeing too is the training for combat. We're talking about weapons caches. We're talking about
and they're on videos now saying we're going to stab and shoot people.
Very much, yes, yeah, and they're holding webinars too, which is just, it blows my mind. We've been able to infiltrate those, but the meetings themselves are difficult sometimes to really chase after because of the decentralization and the way they've got their planning.
But you first reported over a month ago, you had your guy in one of their meetings.
Yes. Oh, yes. And we've got, and that's gone.
And it wasn't just a bunch of meth head kids you were saying. It was sophisticated operatives handling them. That's really because again, these young people are the cover, I believe. I'm going to ask you about that when we come back, for more sophisticated attacks, which they say is the 100th anniversary of the October surprise. Stay with us. Doug Hagmann's our guest. He first broke the news with his investigators across the country. Hagmann and Hagmann is the radio TV show. He owns an investigative training service for police. Great researcher. Looking at this, well, instead of me asking the questions, what other big tidbits should we know? Because it looks to me like they're getting ready for a October 100-year replay of the Bolshevik Revolution. They say they are. Doug Hagmann. I have a big article here where Paul Watson links to a bunch of videos and their own statements that they're going to do it. I mean, they're saying, we're getting ready for a violent overthrow. We're going to kill a bunch of people. You've got this Army officer that just graduated West Point saying he's getting ready to, get violent. And they're just walking around organizing violence.
Exactly. And Paul Joseph Watson did a wonderful job on the article. The links are important there. And, of course, the November 4th event is important. But what they're planning subsequent to that event, they're planning to, and I want to be careful when I say this, they're planning to disrupt all town halls that feature Republican or the conservative leaders. They're planning to disrupt even events, all school events, campus events, that is, I should say.
But nobody ever disrupts all their Hollywood crap.
Exactly. Now there's one thing that's interesting. We're finding in a couple of different instances where we can actually verify that some of the, especially on a city or local levels, some of the city and local officials who work in positions of authority within city halls, whether they're city managers or within the mayoral staffs, even in some of the coastal cities on both coasts, but even within the heartland of America, are actually assisting and providing information to refuse fascism. So
let's be clear. We already know this, but this is more confirmation. They've got moles in government basically giving intel to their operatives, and we know they give them safe harbor to commit crimes on these major universities to be able to extinguish free speech. So this is, we know a lot of professors are getting arrested, assaulting people dressed up with the mask on. So what we know is they have some serious PhD command and control.
Well, right, and they're also being assisted, like I said, by people that hold positions of authority within city governments, and that's very disconcerting, given the fact that you've got the possibility or the potential for actually these people being able to dox the or to unveil the names and addresses of, for example, some of the local leaders who are conservative, who are anti-fascism for real, as opposed to this pseudo-anti-fascist movement. And we're seeing that. So the threat to the individuals who are out there politically, the political leadership, the conservative political leadership is incredible, especially given the fact that they've got this automatic pipeline, and they're refining this pipeline of information through these seminars, the local meetups and meet and greets, as well as on social networking. You've pointed this out, but the danger, in my view, anyway, and what we found. The dangerous period is not going to be necessarily November 4th. It's going to be what happens after that. And they've declared war on Donald Trump and Pence. That's a given, but they're going more local. So I would urge anyone in a position, a conservative, politically conservative position on a local level, and even some. There's even some discussion about attacking some evangelical churches, and now
we just saw that last weekend.
Yeah, well, exactly. But let me just say this on a grander scale. With that information,
stay there. I want you to recap that, and then I want to ask you the big question, because sometimes they do some disinfo, but I agree they have their political launch in November, and then they build towards violence after that. But then also October's the day of the revolution. So I see it all building up even earlier. Let's war game this. When should we? Well, we'll talk about it. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. A tale of two cities. The paradox. It's always a paradox. To the parallax view. We see people waking up to political correctness, waking up to nationalism being the answer, free market being the answer, as if that's rocket science. Look at the historical examples. We see the poisonous Hollywood arrogance being exposed. We see Hillary still arrogantly stomping around, only digging her political hole deeper. But then we have massive reports on Infowars.com, on PrisonPlanet.com, NewsWars.com, and, of course, on HagmanandHagman.com and all the other sites. We'll put up his site, the HagmanReport.com. He's got a bunch of sites, Northeast Intelligence Network, you name it. Excellent website, excellent shows. You've got all this going on, and they're not going to give up. And so they say November 4th, November 5th, we have the videos in the story, Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. They say November 4th they launched this. They're already blocking roads. We can show you the video and saying, it's begun, it's beginning. And then they say, we're going to kill cops. We're going to stab people. We're going to kill white people. It's mainly whites leading it. Usually, I'm not against trannies, but it's usually like tranny men saying they're going to kill everybody. I guess they're on Prozac or something. But I don't know. Tranny men. God, I can't handle the insanity anymore. The point is tranny persons. And it's not that I don't have problems with some corrupt police or I don't have problems with issues, but it's like a full-on group of crazy people wanting a huge civil war when we actually have a president trying to turn the economy back on. So in closing, talking to Doug Hagman of the Hagman Report, great investigative journalist and private investigator that trains police in multiple states with all his great sources. What are the other big points people should know? And yes, I tend to agree. They do what they say they're going to do by launching this attack November 4th. And then that's political. And then it builds, and they hope copycat violence, hashtag hunt Republicans, like we saw Democrat strategists putting out. And then what, a false flag or something to make them the victims? Like they're trying to have clashes, hoping somebody does something violent. To then, you know, they hurt a bunch of people, kill a bunch of people at a church or whatever. That's cute and funny. But one woman gets run over. It's terrible, but they say we're all guilty. I mean, it seems like they're going to need to add a false flag to this for it to then be a big enough blow up to give the cover for the attempted removal of Trump, which all of Mueller's people and the CIA globalists have said is coming. They say now is the time. They said 2 months ago, that they would have him removed. Here we are 2 months later. Are they behind, or what do you think?
I think it's a question, from what we've seen, it's a question of organization. It was initially a matter of funding. That seems to be taken care of via the Alliance for Global Justice. But now I think it's a matter of organization. And what you mentioned about the false flag, they have used in the past the phrase righteous beatings, meaning to applying that, of course, to their enemies. Now what they're saying is we're willing to take righteous beatings for the right publicity. And we're seeing this and we're hearing this in these local chapter meetings that they're dispersed. So I think in order,
they may beat each other up because they saw the Christian Prayer Group 3 weeks ago, as you pointed out, take the beatings, black, white, you name it, together. That destroyed them. That was their Mahatma Gandhi moment, their Martin Luther King, their Jesus Christ moment. So now, absolutely, they would then have their own people beat each other up.
Well, either that or put themselves in a position to get wounded in some way, some very public way. And then, of course, that will allow them the righteous response, which is another phrase that they're throwing about. And we're seeing now as well the Muslims, and I have to throw this out there. This is not meant to be anything but the truth here, where some of the training manuals used by Al-Qaeda, used by, for example, the Al-Batar series, and the Inspire magazine, which is written in English, being actually used for instructional material for some of these local chapters. And the
left has publicly adopted the flag, the regalia. They love it. They think it's sexy.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, from Robert Avakian to Carl Dix on down, Avakian, of course, founding Refuse Fascism, what we're seeing at this point, and I think that in this order, and I don't know the timetable, but I do suspect you're going to see essentially attacks on properties, Molotov cocktails, and the targets will be churches, police stations, attacks on police themselves, police officers. Of course, that's
and by the way, just like Al-Qaeda, like you said, or Inspire magazine, they put out the propaganda hoping lone wolves activate, just like the Sudanese Muslim that shot, 9 people, killing 1. He said, I went there to kill white Christians. So I mean, it's happening.
Yes. So the town halls, especially those hosting political conservatives and any type of Christian conservative biased meeting group, whatever, or I shouldn't say anti, but anti-Sharia groups are targets. Those are the primary high list priority targets. And then, of course, the supporters of Donald Trump. Anyone with a red MAGA hat, for example, or wearing a Trump shirt. It's open season on everyone like that. And I don't want to sound alarmist, but this is what they're telling the foot soldiers.
And what do you think they're hoping? Maybe not blow up a federal building and blame it on us, but they attack enough folks, the media covers it up, a few lone people fight back, then that's billed as an attack on them like they tried with Charlottesville, and then it blows up bigger?
Yeah, and I think the Rahm Emanuel quote, "Never let a crisis go to waste." I think that's kind of the mantra here, where looking at this, let's make sure that we can engage, cause chaos, of course, overwhelm the system, and really tax the EMS, the police, tax the response, even to the extent where, think SDS back in the 70s and 60s. Along with the communist groups and the Weathermen. The fact is they didn't do enough back then. They're saying, look, we learned our lesson back then. We didn't win then. Now we're going to have to do a little bit more. And, not a little bit more, much more. So everyone's a target. This is open season on everyone. And again, I don't want to sound alarmist, but this is what they're saying in these groups. And the tapes, or I call them tapes, the recordings have been
sure. Let me ask you this then in closing. HagmannReport.com is the main website you want to go to. I just threw out a few others out of memory, HagmannReport.com. Let me ask you this. Clearly, it's a 100-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. They admit that's their plan. They're all activating. They have these army officers decloaking, saying, yes, we're communists. We're gonna get you. They're not getting in trouble. I mean, this is just, they've been breeding like termites underneath the floorboards here. It looks like they're getting ready to launch their big physical assault. They've lost politically. Mueller's an idiot. Everything's falling apart. They're in trouble. I think they're going to try something desperate and violent on an organized scale, have the media phrase it like it's good, claim it's all Trump's fault, and try to remove him. That said, their whole NFL launch to create this environment and turn up the pressure has gone flat. So regardless, even if this thing goes off as a dud or fails, I think it's clear to say we are in for some really dangerous, crazy times. And I think everybody needs to be going into October, into November 4th, as you said. We're not out offensively looking for trouble. But you see somebody Molotov cocktails, burning stuff, shooting people, have your firearm, defend yourself, and light them up. Because, everybody needs to know, do not offensively do anything. But you need to be ready, especially if you're cops. And again, people say, oh, you just worship the police now. They've used the cops as a scapegoat for political warfare. There's some bad cops, good cops. It's one of our institutions. They want to overthrow that, bully it into submission. And yes, they are shooting cops in the back of the head, killing them in patrol cars every week. It's all the same group. That's all a beta test to just get the cops used to it. So when the main assault comes, cops sit around and don't know what they've been hit by. Every one of these Antifa, every one of these communist groups, every one of these Congress people that push this, they're all guilty. Because if they launch the real Bolshevik attack, I think we're talking hundreds of dead cops in the middle of the night, shot in their cruisers. They think the cops are going to then roll up, send up the white flag, and kiss their ass. That's already been the plan. Bring in the federal review boards, say they're sorry. CNN said, hey, more cops are dying. You better stop, realizing you're bad. You better go under Loretta Lynch's Strong Police, Strong Communities Act. I mean, this is really brazen bullying. Don't they get, America was asleep, not wimps. They're starting to wake us up. I think they better understand that, well, they don't know because they've never actually got hurt. I think this is a bunch of wimps trying to practice war. And I don't think they understand that they're about to really get put in a wood chipper.
Good points, all, and I believe that they have mischaracterized the right or the conservatives' temperament or courteous lack of response or tolerance, shall we say, for acceptance, and that's a wrong thing to do. Again, what I see taking place here is really the attacks against the buildings, the attacks against the police, the attacks against the political and social conservatives, and it will gradually increase because it's almost mentally that they believe that Lynch or Holder is still in the Justice Department, and perhaps they have holdovers there, but certainly they're not getting much resistance at the federal level, so they feel empowered where they can go off and do whatever they need to do without much potential for punitive consequences. That's the attitude, at least, that we've seen.
Well, I see anybody in a black mask waving a gun around. I mean, these people, a parrot tests its perch. And they've been testing, and they think they're just going to get away with all this. And I'm a target, you're a target, and these people don't scare me. America rolling over does. And you know what? I know in my heart, Doug, America's not going to roll over. I know if they pull this, I don't want them to do this, but the Machiavelli in me, the devil in me, almost hopes they do, because then they're going to get back 100 times what they did. It's like the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. I mean, but they're so domesticated, so cowardly. But it doesn't mean they can't play video games, practicing to kill people, and can't kill a lot of folks. But it's a hell of a time to be alive. Anything else, Doug?
No, and you're right. They've got strong thumbs from the video games, but they've got no idea necessarily what our response is going to be. And I think they're underestimating what the typical American response will be. But that's not stopping them from planning and from promoting at this point, the righteous violence to fight the fascist Donald Trump and his agenda. So I think we're going to see a ramp up in violence, perhaps as early as, around November 4th. And I would be very, very concerned in the time period between then and Christmas by not necessarily the Islamic groups, but by the domestic terrorist groups, especially and including Revcom, Antifa, Refuse Fascism, and Indivisible.
Well, they're using Islam as their muscle. I really see in the tea leaves, Antifa's the cover. The media is already preparing to flush them by now going, okay, yeah, maybe they're terrorists. Then they use Islamic groups to really carry out the attacks. And then basically the Antifa gets flushed.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and that's a great model, and it's geographically, it's not specific to any one geographical region yet, but that's the model that we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, because we've got investigators on the West Coast, East Coast, and a couple other places, without getting into too much into detail, that have infiltrated these groups. And actually, we've bumped into one. I'm not going to say a federally, one state officer there who was working undercover. It's kind of funny, but the bottom line is the interest doesn't appear to be with the federal government, but with the authorities in the state and county and local.
I can't believe the feds aren't watching this, even if they're behind it, because the deep state. Why would you just let this run rampant, having even no idea what it's doing? It's super dangerous. All right, Doug Hagmann, thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
We're going to skip this break and the one at 50 so that Jack Posobiec has more time. Current naval intelligence officer, formerly in intelligence, says the president likes him and retweets him. He was banned because if you're a West Point Army officer graduate that says he wants a violent revolution and hates America, then you get promoted. If you love America and have served your country, then you're a bad person. But it was great having you here earlier this week, Jack. We need to talk more on the phone the next few days about a lot of stuff we're working on, a lot of big things coming up. So good to have you here with us. I'm going to let you take over in about 2 minutes, but I wanted to ask you, big story on DrudgeReport.com. Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. Link after link after link with videos of mainline leftists and communists saying November 4th, they're going to start killing people, stabbing people, murdering police. Organized criminal activity here. What do you think, as a smart guy, they're planning? Go ahead and take over.
Alex, what they're planning to do here with Antifa and with all of these organizations is they're attempting, number one, not necessarily to take over the U.S. They know they can't overthrow the United States. They know that they don't have the abilities, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the material, the supplies. That's not the real issue here. The real issue for them is they want to make the impression. They want to show that the Trump presidency, the Trump administration is discredited. They want to have this new line, and the media has tried line.
I totally agree. It's an intro to have him removed to say, look, America's in turmoil. It's your fault.
Exactly. It's a way to say he's illegitimate. And if you remember, you go back. First it was, well, it wasn't the electoral vote. It was the popular vote. And then it was the electoral college was going to revolt against him. Well, that didn't happen. And then it was the recount. We had the recount. And then it was the Russian collusion delusion, which has now been completely debunked. And so now they're turning back to Antifa. They're saying, well, he promised law and order. He couldn't bring law and order. He's still not a legitimate president. It's trying to make America think that Trump is to blame for all this division. They're now blaming him for all the NFL stuff, which actually happened under Barack Obama. But they want Americans to think that he's to blame for the division, that he's to blame for the
I agree. And here's my final question. It's not working. I mean, disagree if you disagree. It's all blowing up in their face. Trump's approval ratings are up. The economy's starting to roar back. They're getting more and more desperate. Don't they get it's not working?
They do get it that it's not working, Alex, and that's why it's pushing them to become more and more brazen. It's pushing them to become more and more desperate. Alex, a year ago, these people were using warrantless or very trumped up warrant wiretaps of the Trump the Trump campaign at the time. That was the level of lawlessness these people were planning to go to. That they were able to take things to that level. They assumed nobody was going to do anything about it. So when it comes to them saying, are they going to commit crimes, Alex, they already have committed crimes. They've already gotten to the point where they've broken the law. That we've seen them in.
And that's why they're so dangerous, because they've committed so many crimes. They're desperate to get Trump out, not out of arrogance, but out of absolute cornered rat necessity.
Yes. If they see a way to foment anger, to foment division against the president, if they start to see the politics of the American people. So America's center of gravity has always been public opinion, right? The Russians understood this. The Chinese understood this. They understand that because we're a democracy, we're beholden to the wishes of our people. If our people start to lose faith in a government, we lose faith in a president, then it's time to strike. This is what happened under Nixon. Some argue this is what happened under JFK. They're trying to establish this is definitely what happened with the Vietnam War. They're trying to establish the same type of circumstances, the same type of information environment to take the president out, either willingly or unwillingly.
Show's yours, my friend. Great points.
Thank you very much, Alex. Well, the one thing that I definitely wanted to cover today that we saw, this actually was a massive report last night by, believe it or not, CNN, where I don't know if other people saw this, but I've got the link up. I'm showing it to other people. We've been talking about this Russia collusion, did Russia work with the Trump administration? Was there any information, any meetings, any emails, collusion with Russia, with Vladimir Putin? Well, what we saw now is that number one, there were a couple of Facebook ads, not very much. However, Facebook and Twitter have now come forward, and in a massive report, believe it or not, CNN, they're kind of cutely dancing around the fact about this. They're admitting that one of the major Black Lives Matter accounts, this account called Blacktivists, was actually run by the Russian government. Now, CNN is basing this off of sources, so I want everyone to take it with a grain of salt because, again, it's CNN, and we don't know. We've learned that CNN is willing to push fake news if it fits their narrative. However, the reason that this report specifically stuck out to me was because it goes in the face of the Russian narrative. It goes in the face of the narrative that Russia and Vladimir Putin were the ones who were trying to get Trump elected.
Well, Obama had hundreds of big NGOs spending billions a year in Russia. As I said, I turn it over to you. You're making a great point. Russia's half overthrown by the West. So just because money comes out of a Russian company and does something doesn't mean it either way.
Exactly. And Alex, when I was there in Austin earlier this week, we talked about this. Yuri Andropov, all the other KGB directors before he was the party secretary back in the 60s and 70s, they knew that to break America up, you had to push those racial fault lines. You had to find those racial divisions and inflame those tensions. And so this idea of fomenting a revolution or fomenting some sort of a racial division, race war, the KGB called it back in those days, it's apparently the same tactics we're now seeing with the KGB, and their successor organizations in Russian propaganda arms. This is what actual disinformation looks like, because if you look at some of this stuff, and I've got it pinned at my Twitter account, it's all saying that the KKK has taken over the U.S. government. It's anti-police, it's anti-government, anti-authority. and there's basically calls for African Americans to rise up, to throw off the chains of the U.S. government. That's what this is calling for. This is Russian disinformation. It falls very much in line with the same type of racial tensions that we're seeing from globalists, from other organizations. And to your point, Alex, it's not just the idea that because it's coming from Russia, that means it must be Vladimir Putin. We're not sure who exactly in Russia is pushing this stuff. So if you look at it, we've got it up now on the screen, basically calling for the overthrow of police, the attacks on police, attacks on the government. This is huge stuff. But of course, the mainstream media isn't going to have some major national outrage over it. They're going to report it once, and I predict they're not going to bring it up again because it falls completely contrary to their narrative that the Russians were doing everything they could to push Donald Trump, when in fact they were not doing that. They were seeking chaos. They were seeking division. That is the traditional form of disinformation, the traditional form of psyops that we've seen for many, many times under the Russian government. And so when I see all of this coming out, it makes a lot more sense to me as a trained intelligence officer in my previous experience as to see what's coming out. We've got a lot more coming up, folks. We're going to have independent journalist Jacob Wall come up to talk more collusion between Facebook and possibly the Hillary Clinton campaign. That's right, it's Facebook leaks. Julian Assange was talking about this. Stick right here. We will be right back so soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. InfoWars, big fourth hour. Jack Posobiec guest hosting. Really happy to be here. Very much appreciative. We've got on the line Jacob Wall, this amazing independent young journalist who's come out, massive scoops, massive analysis. And one thing that I saw last night, it was very interesting. I was looking on Twitter and I saw Julian Assange on his account started tweeting out some emails from John Podesta. And I said, well, it's Julian Assange and John Podesta emails. There's certainly nothing new there. But I started to look at them and I started to read more into what was going on and certainly read into the news cycles of the day, where we're finding out now that Mark Zuckerberg has essentially admitted that he colluded with Russia. He ran Russian disinformation ads, both for Trump, against Trump, for Bernie, against Bernie, all sorts of stuff out there. And then I saw this report. It was an email from Zuckerberg and Podesta essentially talking about colluding to rig the election. So I was trying to figure out what's going on. And I saw that Jacob had written this excellent article up at Offended America. I want everyone to go and see it. And I want to welcome Jacob on the show on InfoWars to break that down for us. Jacob, how's it going?
Hey, Jack, it's great to be here. Yeah, I mean, it's as clear as day. It's all come out now. Russia wanted Hillary Clinton to win. And you just were mentioning, Russia wants revolutionary forces in the United States. They want to overthrow natural order, law and order. That's what they're into. And what the media keeps getting wrong is that they think that Trump is a revolutionary. They think that Trump represents an explosion in the American order. And that's not what he is. Trump is pure Americana. He's traditional. He's back to the Constitution. If you want to talk about revolutionaries, look at Hillary.
Exactly. So let's break down some of these emails. What exactly was going on between Mark Zuckerberg and John Podesta that Julian Assange wanted to call our attention to?
So just a timeline here to start off.
Okay.
The first thing that happened is that Hillary's top lawyer for her campaign worked for Facebook in 2011 and got them a special letter from the Federal Election Commission so that they would not have to disclose the spending that took place on political ads. 5 years later, this gentleman works for Hillary Clinton. And what happens is Sheryl Sandberg in 2015 is sending direct emails to Hillary Clinton saying it was wonderful. She met with me. She was magical with my kids, whatever that means.
So we're seeing a revolving door between Facebook executives and and Hillary Clinton campaign going back and forth. Well, now they're there. Now they're working for Hillary. It's essentially the exact same people going back and forth, bringing their Rolodexes, bringing their connections and influence from them from one organization to the other. Go ahead.
Right. And what this lawyer argued in front of the Federal Election Commission is he argued that the reason they shouldn't have to disclose ad spending is because Facebook ads are like a pin that you put on your shirt or a bumper sticker. He said they're not a big deal. So which one is it? Is the Russian low-budget $100,000 operation to buy Facebook ads something that swings the election? Or is it a small thing? Because Hillary's own people argued in front of the Election Commission that it doesn't make a difference. So which one is it? And the media is going to have to decide.
What exactly? There was that line that Assange called attention to. I thought was so important that Sheryl Sandberg said in her email. So the Facebook executive Sheryl Sandberg, what did she say specifically to John Podesta?
She said, and I quote, "I want to help any way I can. I still want HRC to win badly." I mean, you can take that one to
Hillary
the bank.
Rodham Clinton.
That's right. And a reminder, Sheryl Sandberg is the COO of Facebook. She's in the trenches every day. She's a senior executive. She reports directly to Mark Zuckerberg. And then we've got Zuckerberg in a very long memo to the Clinton campaign begging and pleading for a meeting with Hillary Clinton. He says, "I know you're busy, but I need a meeting badly. I want to help you out any way that I can," talking specifically.
And not just the head of the campaign, but actually John Podesta. So Zuckerberg is specifically requesting for a meeting with John Podesta, chairman, someone who, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually have much background in the tech community. But what he does have a background is in the swamp and swamp tactics and linking together globalist politicians and other organizations there in Washington, D.C.
That's right. And so what they likely organized, it's looking like, is that they organized a Russian ad buy, a very small one. Okay, $100,000 is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket relative to all the ad spending. But we have to remember, Russia's got the same GDP per capita, actually slightly less than Grenada. This is not a rich country that we're talking about. And they did a low-budget ad buy. The ads, as we've mentioned, were Black Lives Matter ads. They were pro-Hillary Clinton ads. And again, Hillary Clinton's the revolutionary, not Trump. She's the one that wants to shift us over to basically communism light. And so that's what happened. Facebook, together with the Clinton campaign. And we know that Sheryl Sandberg did meet with Hillary. It sounds like Hillary came to her house because she said that Hillary was magical with her kids. That we know. We don't know if the Podesta-Zuckerberg meeting took place physically. I'm sure they had correspondences. We see the emails, but we don't know that they met in person. However, Facebook
But we're talking about multiple meetings, potential multiple meetings between the Hillary campaign, John Podesta, and Facebook. One that they admit to, which is specifically between Hillary Clinton. There was another one, I think it was on Hillary's agenda, her schedule, when she was in New York City one day in, I think, March, about research. What was that kind of research? What was that meeting?
Well, this dates back to 2015. And if anybody should be calling attention to these emails, it's Bernie Sanders. Okay, they were rigging the election for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. This was only 2015 at the time. And as we know, there was tons of rigging that went on. Donna Brazile of CNN gave the debate questions to Hillary and didn't give them to Bernie. It was a completely rigged race against Bernie Sanders. And now we know that that all dates back to Facebook in 2015 having in-person meetings with Hillary Clinton, having in-person meetings potentially between Zuckerberg and Podesta, but at bare minimum having regular correspondences, and saying, "I want HRC to win badly." Presumably that means against Sanders. It can also mean against whoever the Republican candidate is. But at the time, they didn't know that the candidate would be Trump. Important to remember a timeline here. But if the collusion happened in 2015, it certainly happened in 2016 in the general election. There's no reason to believe that if they would stop.
And we remember this. We also know, already, and since we're going back here to 2015, we also have to remember that what came out during 2016. And I know I actually had a reporter reach out to me today and say, "Jack, why are you posting all this old stuff about Facebook? This stuff was reported, this all came out." And I said, well, hold on a second, because we have to re-examine this information in the new light of what's come out regarding collusion between Facebook and Russia, Mark Zuckerberg admitting to the Russian ad buys, what other ad buys were going on, what else was going on. So you have to re-examine this old information. And other information that we saw very specifically during them was, number one, that news ticker, the trends on Facebook, it came out, and this was not in some sort of right-wing magazine. I believe it was Gizmodo that came out and said there actually were staffers at Facebook that were changing the news trends, whatever trending topics, trending articles, to be anti-Trump and to be pro-Hillary. They were specifically and demonstrably doing this. Then, secondly, we saw that Facebook was censoring WikiLeaks. It came out and Facebook essentially admitted it. This was a New York Post. Anyone can go and look at this, that they were coming out, and if you posted WikiLeaks to Facebook, people remember this because every time they came out like a new drop, they would trend all over Twitter, but Facebook, they didn't have the same kind of reach. They admitted that they were blocking WikiLeaks. So now when we look at all of this in totality, when we look at all of this with the light of the new evidence in terms of Zuckerberg admitting that there was Russian involvement, now we're seeing that it's potentially that the blocks to WikiLeaks were to cover up their own tracks. Could it have been that they were blocking WikiLeaks because they wanted to cover up the fact that they themselves, as Facebook, were working with Hillary Clinton, that they were working with the Russians, that they were spreading this disinformation, that Russian groups like this, Blacktivists, were out there talking about fomenting revolution against the government, fomenting anti-police stuff. Exactly. So
that's almost certainly why they blocked.
How do you look at that older evidence in light of this new evidence? How do you look at those old reports in light of this new evidence, Jacob?
Well, I'll tell you why this new evidence is coming up, and I'll tell you kind of why this is relevant again. And that's because we are not the only ones examining what John Podesta was doing in the election with Facebook. CNN is not the only one doing that. Robert Mueller, the special counsel, subpoenaed the Podesta Group, which was started by John Podesta and during the election was run by his brother, Tony Podesta, who became famous when he was inviting John Podesta to a spirit cooking dinner. That's the first time I heard about Tony Podesta. But both of them were called in front of the special counsel to testify. It's unclear whether that testimony was under oath, but it did take place last week. Now, when Roger Stone gets called to testify in front of a House committee, it's cover-to-cover news for 3 days. The media utterly ignored the fact that John Podesta and the Podesta Group, the entire political consulting group, was subpoenaed by Mueller and called to testify. Why is that? Maybe Mueller's looking at Podesta collusion. We don't know, but it's extremely disturbing to look at. And then there's new evidence that's going to come out every day because this Mueller investigation is perhaps the leakiest investigation we've ever seen. And in every other respect, it's like the KGB. The only way it's not is because they leak nonstop.
Yeah, one thing that I would like to see is when is Mueller now going to go and subpoena Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg? So we're talking about election interference, who interfered, who meddled, who bought ads, who was running ads, who was running disinformation campaigns. Doesn't now Mueller have not only the political opening, but also the legal mandate in terms of the purview of his special counselship? Doesn't he now have the not only authority, but mandate to go and issue a subpoena for Mark Zuckerberg's communications, for Mark Zuckerberg to see? Now, we remember the WikiLeaks, the John Podesta emails ended at a certain point. They didn't go all the way through the election. So we wouldn't know what other communications that Mark Zuckerberg may have had to collude with the Hillary Clinton campaign. We don't know if they exist. This would, to my mind, and I'm not a lawyer, and you're not a lawyer, but I would like to run this by a lawyer to see, does this grant essentially probable cause to show that Mark Zuckerberg and other executives at Facebook, other executives at big tech, were essentially putting their finger on the scales of the Justice Department? What do you think?
Well, we can't rely on Mueller to be, an ethical, reliable investigator. Most of his team is top Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama donors. However, this evidence did provide probable cause to somebody, not Mueller, but the Trump administration, who we just learned in the New York Post last night, this is reported everywhere, obtained a search warrant, not a subpoena, but a search warrant granted by a judge to gain access to the information of more than 6,000 Facebook accounts. All we know about the accounts at this point is that they're anti-Trump, that we know. So some judge somewhere saw the mandate to investigate Facebook and issued not a subpoena, but a search warrant to do so. And the Trump administration,
this is actually massive, and I want people to understand this, that what you're talking about is breaking news. This hasn't been covered very much by mainstream media. We're going to bring it up here, but essentially that a judge has issued a search warrant for Facebook accounts. Now, break down a little bit more of these accounts. I haven't seen this report myself, but are these bot accounts that we're seeing being anti-Trump, or are these private citizens on their personal accounts, Jacob?
Well, what we know is that there was one particular account that they looked at, which was one of three kind of main accounts. These were page accounts that lead to websites. Jeff Sessions had previously obtained a warrant to get server data from the hosting company that runs the website that this page links to. Now he's obtained a warrant to go in and get the information.
And that was Disrupt J20, right?
That's right. Disrupt J20.
That was Disrupt J20. So right. So you're talking about, and I know about this one. I can actually tell a funny story about this. But I know about the Disrupt J20. So Sessions has been going after Antifa websites, and Disrupt J20 is essentially an Antifa front group. Now I can actually talk a little bit more in depth about this one, because I actually got a request, a message from that in terms of the company, because I actually had an account with one of those websites that I was using with Disrupt J20 that I was using to monitor what was going on, to monitor their activity. Right. So because I had that account with sort of an email that I had set up just for that purpose, I actually was one of the people that got the message as well from them. So yes, I can. You're absolutely correct.
I'm glad to hear that, because that means that I'm really happy to hear that, because what that means is that these investigations are working. I mean, they're really getting to every last one of the accounts. You're telling us that you just had an account that was used to monitor it, and even you got a notification from them. So that tells us clear as day that Jeff Sessions is going after this and going after it extremely aggressively, which is important. And we know that these groups are associated with Antifa. They are violent groups. They were declared domestic terrorist groups as far back as April 2016, before Trump ever came into power. And what we know is that there's as many as 6,000 other accounts whose passwords, usernames, credit card information, and anything else that Facebook has is not going to be turned over, but is going to be taken. A big difference between a subpoena and a search warrant is this is not a request. This is a notification that we're coming in and we're getting the data on behalf of the DOJ. Is
yeah,
what
there's
this
basically
is.
been this big thing, and I was reading last night about this, and there's basically been a change, right, in the way that we view our technology companies, the way that we view platforms. It kind of, in the early days of the internet, used to always be, well, whatever, you're not responsible for the content, you're only responsible for providing a platform, right? That was sort of the way things went with the internet. But all of this changed after, and if you go back, it goes after Charlottesville. When Charlottesville happened, suddenly the game changed, the rules changed, and they said, well, we're gonna clamp down on these hate groups. And at first it was cracking down, and then rightfully so, cracking down on these these racist, these white supremacist groups. But now we're realizing that the same tools, the same environment, the same statistics, the same constrictions, the same circumstances can be used to go after other extremist groups. And in this case, the case of search warrants executed faithfully and constitutionally under the Fourth Amendment against Antifa.
And that's an important difference between what we see here, because I know some people are going to hear this, they're going to say, that sounds a little bit authoritarian to go after every Facebook account that was associated with this. I don't know about that. But here's the big difference between what Trump did and what Obama did. Trump got a search warrant in a real court, a public court in front of a real judge. When Obama was busy wiretapping Trump Tower, he was getting FISA warrants, which take place in a secret national security court and are traditionally only supposed to be used against foreign adversaries like Al-Qaeda, and for good reason. You don't want Al-Qaeda to know that we're surveilling them. But Obama abused the FISA court and used it against American citizens, i.e. Paul Manafort. So this is a big difference. Trump didn't use the FISA court. He didn't use secret search warrants and KGB tactics like Mueller has used and like the FBI under Comey used. He's using legitimate tactics to
exactly.
These
are the tactics, the law and order that we've talked about. Now, a lot of people say, hey, I wish I knew there were more about it. I wish I heard more about what was going on. But obviously, the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions, knows about OPSEC. He knows that if you start telling people who is under investigation, that's when they start destroying evidence. We got 30 seconds left, Jacob. Let people know where to find you, where to find your website for all the best new articles.
Yeah, people can follow me at Jacob A. Wohl on Twitter. They've seen me on Twitter. They can also check out my website at offendedamerica.com and see all the latest news.
Thanks so much for coming on, Jacob. I really appreciate it. Massive breaking news, everybody. The stuff that's coming down. The Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, going after Antifa, fighting them through Facebook, fighting through this Facebook collusion, finding out what was going on. It wasn't the Russians. It wasn't us. It was America waking up, and it was the establishment fighting back at what we were doing. Be right back. Jack Posobiec coming in, guest hosting the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show today on Friday. Had a great week down earlier this week when I got to go down to Austin to visit the InfoWars Studios, the mothership. Guys, for those of you who haven't been there, it's absolutely amazing. incredible to see that not only the stuff they have there, but the plans they have in the works. For all those people who said that, InfoWars is on the decline and Megyn Kelly, eviscerated this and that. Look, we see what's happening with Megyn Kelly and where her ratings are going. I hear that her show is on the chopping block. They keep moving her around, and it's probably not going to be finished out. But InfoWars is expanding bigger and better and faster than it's lightning speed. It's lightning speed, folks. And that is why I wanted to take a quick second here at the end of the hour before we kick it over to War Room to just do a quick plug, let you guys know about all of the awesome products that are coming up at InfoWars Store to support the expansion. They're building a whole new studio that's actually bigger than any of the studios. There's 2 studios now at InfoWars. There's another podcast room. The original studio is turned into a podcast room. They're building a mega studio, basically. It's a mega studio that's going to be in the back room. I don't even know what they're going to use it for, but if you look, there's 50% off the vitamin mineral fusion. It's the advanced multivitamin formula. It's with essential vitamins, minerals, amino acids. Folks, you can get this. You can add it. It's a limited time right now. You can get it for 50% off. I don't know how long they're going to keep that up for 50 cents or 50% off, excuse me. But if you can get into it now, that is an amazing dietary supplement. Look, it's like my mom always said, you got to take your vitamins. That's something that we're missing from so much of our diets these days. This is a spot where you can get that right now. It's incredible. The other thing, the Caveman Paleo. Now, I'm the kind of guy, I wake up in the morning, I like to work out. I like to get my work in. I like to get it in in early. I like to read my emails while I'm working out, or catch the news on podcasts, listen to Real News with David Knight, because I want to get my workout in the morning, get it in the bank, and then I go for my Caveman True Paleo formula. It's got everything you need in there. It's got bone broth, the turmeric root, the chaga mushroom. It's all actually included in there. It comes in chocolate. I think there's a strawberry one as well. But I'm seeing the chocolate one right now on the screen. Really awesome stuff that you can get up. Really great. You want to get that right after your workout. I'm telling you, it goes right into the muscles, right into your bloodstream. Also, the Secret 12 vitamin B12. It's a proprietary formula. It's methylated, that stuff. It is so incredibly great. And also the new Essentials line, the new Emmerich's Essentials line of essential oils. This is all at InfoWarsStore.com, folks. I'm literally just reading off of it, but it's incredible to see it. It was incredible to see so much of this stuff when I was down there. So the new essential oils from Emmerich's Essentials, it's for overall wellness. It's for aromatherapy, from peppermint to frankincense. It's currently at a 25% discount, and it's that 360 win, right? Like Alex always says, you support your life, you support your lifestyle, and you can support the InfoWar. We've got so much breaking news today. We've had so much breaking news. We're also now hearing reports of a police officer who may have been fatally shot down in Georgia. Hopefully, War Room can pick up on that, can pick up on some of that. It's a breaking story right now. I don't know if it was fatal or if it was just a shooting. That's a report I just saw literally across the screen. I've only got a minute until I kick it out here, but hopefully they can pick up on that story. So there's so much going on. And big tech, Facebook, the Russian collusion delusion, all of this is turning out in ways. Okay, so one officer was killed, second wounded in shooting. Yeah, we got the report up now from Fox News. This is a horrible situation. Folks, let's kick it over to War Room because there's so much. We can't even cover it with one person. I've only got an hour. They've got 3 more. Hopefully we can break out more. Hopefully if we can get around Facebook blocking us, blocking our content, blocking our collusion, check me out, Twitter.com/Jack Posobiec, JCKPOSOBIEC. Thanks again so much for having me on today. Really appreciate the opportunity to co-host here on InfoWars on this big 4th hour. Stick right here. War Room is right back.
Let's go to Debit in Florida. Debit in Florida, you're on the air.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. Listen, I have bought your product, and I gotta say they're amazing. Anyone who's on the fence, buy it, because I've got Caveman, Superman Vitality, Secret 12, Vitamin Mineral Fusion. I've got the body armor.
Wow, thank you. Wow. You're the type of listener that makes it all possible. Which nutraceutical does you like best?
I really like the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, to be honest. That's amazing. Really incredible. I drank it in the morning, and I swear to you, I felt incredible. Like I haven't felt weak. My morning was fantastic, and I love you guys. I love the InfoWars crew, and I just want to, I want to take this opportunity to tell anybody out there who's on the fence, Just buy it. You will love it. I'm telling you, I've never bought a bad product.
What you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com. It's a win-win, InfoWarsLife.com.